Why people were asking, hey, do you want to do a pair thing, or like why don't you do videos about game design? Um, so I've been working on a game for a really long time, right? And I think the value of a design video is much higher if people can actually play the game and know what I'm talking about, right? Like, oh, because I played the thing, I understand what he's saying when, etc. And I just haven't released a new game in a long time. And so I think that after this game comes out, I might do more talks and stuff about design. That said, I am a little bit frustrated in it's actually heartening to see, videos like what we watched that refer to some of the talks I did, because I mean, to be quite honest, for the most part, I feel like I spent all this time doing all these talks and I was just kind of shouting into the void.
Is this Norwood pattern or someone who makes toys? Maybe. I think so, probably. I think so.
Nobody cares. Because most games that are made, they just make they just make fundamental mistakes that are so much more basic even than what you try to discuss in these talks, right? And so I feel like kind of nobody even cares. Forget about my talks that I did. Nobody even really cares about the craft of game design very much anymore, is how I feel about it. And so I feel like it's much more effective to make games than
Yeah, I've changed my opinion. I've made fun of him, but I think after watching all his stuff, I think he's a very thoughtful person. And even if he's wrong about certain things, I like him far more than most people on the internet. And once he's dead, not that he's gonna die soon, but once he dies, the internet will be worse off not being able to have these like rants, these autistic rants.
is to talk about designing games, just because like if you make a game and the design is good in a readable fashion, the people who have the
What's up,
eyes
Cheese
to
Chomper?
see will see. Like that's how I learned game design, is by playing video games, right? And so maybe I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I feel like a lot of it was a waste of time. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't, but you know. So that's the answer to that question. We'll see. We'll see how I feel about it after this game is out. I feel like I would much rather do something more like what Matthew just did there, like rather than going to a conference on specific timing and doing a thing, just like giving a pre-prepared talk like that is better in a lot of ways. Yeah, dude, sometimes conferences are great, but sometimes they're just like using you in a really bad way. I don't know.
Facts.
Speaking of game reviews, however,
Watch Fresh and Fit Collab and Circuit. I have no interest in that, dude. Like, it's just like dumb people all around, just being dumb. It's so stupid, dude.
I wanted to touch on something that I think is
Bro
really
wants to touch on something. That's crazy.
interesting. From
Yeah, it's just clown content, dude. It's literally just clown content. Like, who cares? Who cares? A bunch of like retarded women from Miami, and then like a bunch of like cokehead influencers being annoying and yelling at each other.
neck of the woods, because in addition to
It's so like blown out.
building games,
That's really the best way to describe like the streamer space and like the political space at this point. Blown out. It's like people always talk about roasties getting blown out, right? That's what we always used to say. That was the joke we would always say. Every time I stream, I'd say top 10 blown out roasties. We'd make jokes like that all day about women. But in reality, it was like streamers and like streaming communities and political communities getting blown out. And the women were fine. The women were fine the whole time. It was just streaming communities getting blown out. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where we're at with like streaming and content. Totally blown out.
Conversations and all of that stuff. I also sort of moonlight as my own. I don't have like a publication or anything, but I
Jovian, totally blown out, dude.
play games and I critically analyze them, and I'll share my thoughts in a sort of like more. I guess it is public, but it's just our Discord server. You know, it's just we share.
Can you try Pokemon Showdown streams? No, I'm working on my game. I think I think I have a good like base, and I'm trying to make it more. I'm trying to make it great. Like I have a good base. The game is good, but it's not great. So I need to make it great. I'm trying to make it great, and I have 189 days to do that. I don't have time to play Pokemon. I don't know.
On games and stuff that are related to our interests. And you know, when I do this,
This my guy must have like the craziest gap teeth ever, which I don't mean that as an insult. Yeah, I know a lot of good people with gap teeth. I don't mean it as an insult, but I've never seen gap teeth that gaps. You know, but usually it's a sign of autism. So it is what it is. But you know, this guy, no disrespect, dude. Bro's hairline's better than mine. So what am I even saying? You know?
I realize that like
Is Beardson making a game? Can I see Beardson's game? Can someone please link me like a footage of Beardson's game or something, or a clip? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just curious. I'm genuinely curious about what it is.
big disconnect between anything that myself or one of my colleagues will say.
I should have Beardson make art for my game. Have him make 3D models for my game. It's a retro 8-bit side scroller? No way, dude. No way, dude. That's not true, dude. Come on. You give me real. That's not true, dude. There's no way.
Anything that you have said, for example, in a
There's
video
no
about
way,
Elden
dude.
Ring and other such videos that are on like the Clips channel that I know is
Hand on the Quran?
a very
Dude,
studious.
that's crazy. I mean, that's good. That's good for him. I want to see it though. I want to see the game. We can do the Cozy Streamer dev bundle.
Listener and viewer. And one of the things that comes up there is the like people will again take the least charitable interpretation and say, oh, you're just like belittling another game so that you can like boost your own. But even if you disregard that, there is this weird thing where in the modern state of things, game reviewers, game journalists are the ones who are supposed to review games, and then game developers are the ones who are supposed to develop games.
Beardson said he would only upload his game. Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe you. I don't know if I believe you that anything is happening with Beardson. Big Manga, don't link to your music in my chat, dude.
And I don't really understand that, because I feel like if you really want to read a review, if you really want to experience a sort of like dissertation on a game and its quality, you would go to somebody who's an established and competent game developer. Like that would be one of the first people you would ask, like, how is this game? Like, is it good? You know, what did you like about it? What did you dislike about it? Because they know about games. They've thought about game design, and they've not just thought about it, but had to ply their trade in a way that a games journalist probably never has, or at least not on the same scale, and certainly not in the same context for most of their career. So I find it weird, you know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in our Western civilization, right? We have this tradition in different fields, like arty fields, right? Of there are people who are the critics. In literature, maybe those people are academics a lot of the time or something, right? And but in art, in other kinds of art, or like film, maybe there's academic film critics, but like in film, it's somebody like Roger Ebert was, or something like that, right? And there's a couple of things going on. One, I think that there are ways in which that role is useful, and there are ways in which it's always been kind of an illusion or a fraud of some kind, right? Which is, yeah, like how often do those people really understand the thing versus, you know, they're projecting that they understand the thing and just making a place for themselves as a credible person because that's how they establish reputation and make money and stuff. And the thing is, through history, it's always been both of those, right? But I think the percentage of people who really get the thing in a deep way is relatively small, right? Always in all these fields, right? Now the problem that we have is that both standards for academia and then standards for journalism have gone down tremendously, right? With the internet disrupting journalism, and then other things happening in academia. Like academia has become much more of just like a mass consumer good than it ever was, and that has had consequences, right? And so, what is that? What is that done? Well, the quality has gone down, and so we're in this weird time. So let's talk about just like not even games, but like regular reporters and stuff. We're in this weird time where we have all these internet journalists who write all this clickbait about like whatever political topic is hot this week. But they
True.
want to be treated with the respect due to the prior generations of journalists who actually like flew to war zones all the time and like collected facts, you know, firsthand. And like I even, you know, before this transition had fully taken place, I even had been interviewed a couple of times, like in the Atlantic and like CBS News and stuff. And the fact checking performed by those organizations, even in that time, which was not that long ago,
Dude, why does it look like
was
fat me
very
over
extensive.
here? This version looks like fat me. That is disturbing, dude. See what I mean?
So, okay, number one, padding's off, so we should fix the padding.
He looks like me, but like fat. It's upsetting, dude. Very odd. But he's not balding, so never mind.
Extensive, like for like, hey, we're doing this 5-page profile on somebody. They had a lot of fact checking that they would do, and like they're trying to be sure that what they were saying was none of that happens anymore, right? But the people who do the clickbait journalism want to be respected as the people who did all the old stuff, and it's not the same job anymore, right? And I think societally eventually we come to give clickbait the disrespect that it is due, but it may take us a little bit longer to get there because just there's inertia in culture, right? I don't know. Maybe we'll never get there. Maybe just claiming that you're an authority on something. That was a little bit of a Freudian slip, but claiming that you're an authority on something and deserving of respect is maybe even enough to get you that in some cases. Always, I don't know. But so now coming to games, there's been a lot of like games have not been static the whole time, right? And so early, like in the 80s and 90s, games were not even that sophisticated, right? And so it was sufficient if you were just excited about games, that probably did make you qualified as a games journalist because like just having played enough games for a couple years was all you really needed to know to be competent in the field because, you know, games were simpler then, right? Now they're not that simple. And what does it take to be competent as a game you know, journalist and critic are even two different fields because journalism is maybe about news and criticism is about evaluation, right? So you know, and I think you were talking about criticism. So going back to that for a second, what does it take to be a competent game critic? Like, I'm not sure anymore because it seems
Being a
to me that
Beardson, being a
games have
Beardly.
skyrocketed in complexity and
Being Beardson,
sophistication,
motherfucking
right?
Beardly, dude.
What I do
The
know,
goat.
what has become very stark for me personally is, well, okay, so rewinding for one more second, I've had a little bit of a weird arc going from something like a critic to something like a creator in the following way. Like I was never a professional games critic who like wrote stuff for game magazines or anything. But I thought of myself more that way because before I professionally made games, I was somebody who had strong opinions about games. That's part of how you get into it, right? And so what is someone who has strong opinions about games? That person is kind of just a critic, right? So I was a little bit thinking in a non-professional critical way about games before I even ever was in the industry.
Go
And
diabetic
so
ass,
I was
dude. Come on,
something
bro.
like proximal to games critics at that time, and we're talking about in the 90s when it was different. And then, you know, I make these things and they take so long to
Belgian.
make.
I'm like 40% Belgian. That's not surprising. Not surprising.
Moi,
I
généralement,
look
au
like
début de mois,
this
je me paye
guy.
un petit facture. Hein. Je me lève le matin et je prends ma matinée pour récolter les pensions. Ce qui me permet, par la même occasion, tu vois, de repérer les vieux qui ont de l'argent. Hein. J'évite par-dessus tout, c'est les jeunes couples qui commencent, parce que ça pue la pauvreté. C'est très agréable. Mais les vieux, hein, ils ont de l'argent, ça c'est sûr. Tour à tour, finot. Tour à tour, polisson. Tour à tour, gangster. Mais tour à tour, généreux. Tu trouves pas que ça sent bizarre ici? Ça sent la trouille, Rémi. On se rapproche, tu sais.
Yeah, this is the one where they go. It's like it's a satire, right? They go around like a hitman or like a guy's like a professional killer, right?
Il est pour bientôt.
I always want. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, mais il était super. Oh, il était gentil. Il était affectueux, il était gentil. Il riait tout le temps, tout le temps, tout le temps.
Yeah, it's awesome, dude.
André, Rémi, ça ne vous rappelle rien, ça? Le vieux fusil. Philippe Loret. Bon film.
That's good. I like that. Thank you. That's very happy that you remind me of that movie. I forgot about that.
And by the time The Witness was done, which took, 7 years approximately, 6.5 really for the main part of it. Still a long time. How many hours do you work on? I don't even know what my average hours a week is that I'm.
Yeah, I think
spending
it looks
working
like a
or thinking about
classic.
something, but multiply
When I read it, I was like, "This is gonna be good." I just forgot about watching it. I never watched it.
50 hours a week.
I'm sure it's
times
good.
50 weeks a year, right? That's like 3,000 hours times 6 years. It's 18,000 hours of being immersed in a subject and thinking hard about it. And The Witness is a pretty big game. So let's say someone plays it very thoroughly. 100 hours. Okay. So you have somebody with 100 hours of experience in this game. I have 18,000 hours of experience in this game. I just can't relate to the 100-hour experience
Thank you, Jeffy.
in some level. And to the extent that that person
I like that Jeffy and Big Bongo don't have mods, so they just yell at each other. So they verbally abuse each other, but neither can attack it. Neither can actually hurt each other. So they're forced to just like grovel and attack each other for no reason.
I don't know. Like there's different kinds.
Makes me happy.
Some people are just better critics than others, right? But some of the critics, like, they think they're being really smart about something, or they think they're like, aha, I'm pulling a gotcha on the person who made this game because I understand why they're being dumb or whatever. And I'm like, you have like a 0.01% understanding of this game. I thought about it for 18,000 hours as the most important thing in my life. Like there's just, that gap cannot really be bridged. And so I just stopped reading criticism of the game. I've read almost none of the reviews of The Witness. I've watched almost no videos about it because I just can't do it, right? And that's not to be elitist, and it's not to be snobby. It's not to be dismissive even. It's just like I'm just in a really different place than the people writing and viewing those. And so the way I think about it now is like, okay, those are not for me.
See you later,
Those
Julian.
videos are not for me.
What are you gonna watch? Teletubbies? What are you gonna watch? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Or is that too advanced for your shoddy?
Therefore,
When you say shoddy, does that mean a child? That's why it's short.
the other people who don't have this much experience in the game, and maybe I disagree strongly with what this person is saying, but you know, it's a free country.
You're
used
sick,
to-
dude.
One of the things that has always riled me up, not even in games, but just in things generally.
What's crazy? When Jovian says she's underage, is that he's from Europe. And they have like age of consent in Europe, it's like 12.
Is when somebody claims to have a strong understanding of something and then goes to teach other people and they're actually kind of a bozo, right? Because you're spreading the bozo-ness to people who don't know. Like somebody who wants to learn from you by definition doesn't know better, right? They're like growing the green shoots. They're naive, right? And for people who are kind of bozos to go in and claim all those people and train them in the ways of being a relatively, someone with a very poor understanding of a topic, to have strong opinions grounded in poor understanding, and to sort of the crime of it is,
I don't really buy this because it's like the reason game critics suck is because that's like a retarded job, like for a retard. Because anybody can tell if a game sucks or not. You don't need, nobody's asking for game reviewers. Like a movie is like a movie reviewer is like a job that you can like actually have, because like you can, like movies can be like taste dependent, and like whereas games are like you just look at reviews. So it's like that's why game critics are like stupid, because like it's like a job. If I was like a soccer reviewer, and it's like no, that's not a real job.
that then
Jeffy
know,
just mad because his packy boyfriend is a bleach cuck freak who is in love with me in a weird ass way. Geralt says Big Mongo. Interesting. Is that true?
the potential is being wasted of young people, right? And so one, again, to make it less inflammatory for maybe the audience of this discussion, but not other discussions, like this is the way I feel about how people are taught to program in school. Most of it is bad ideas, and you spend all these people's time teaching them bad ideas. Now there is some use to it because it's hard to program. If you just do it randomly without training, you probably make a mess for a long time. But like, people get taught to have all these very strong opinions that are actually kind of wrong. They come out of school like robot repeating all these strong opinions about how to program. And fighting people who have maybe more nuanced opinions. And this is all very bad. And I hate that stuff, right? And so trying to bring it back home about games criticism, like, yeah, I do think there are a lot of people with relatively naive, unsophisticated ideas about games. And it is like the Dunning-Kruger observation that those people are very likely to think that they have very sophisticated opinions about games. That's definitely a thing going on. At one time, I would have considered myself very offended by it and like engaged with that directly. And in fact, during Braid, I still did sometimes. I was like, during Braid, this is covered a little bit in Indie Game the Movie, but I've since realized that like it's actually hard for people. There's not quite enough context in the movie to really know what this is about. But you know, when Braid came out, there was at that time still a very heavy, like when you had people on the internet who were trying to be smart about the games, this was still heavily colored by this academic tradition of like, you know, people who were professors at game schools and whatever. And there was this whole thing about people who were the narratologists who like decided that stories determine the meaning of the game because it was this academic tradition that came up by descending from the English departments, and they spawned out and said, hey, games are new and we can have new spawn of our English department and extend our cultural power if we critique games the way we critique stories and leverage all these tools.
Okay, games are toys. Games are not art. Games are toys.
Had people in academia who are the ludologists who said like, no, actually gameplay is where meaning comes from. And like, it was all massively oversimplified and tainted in this way that like anytime you have way too many people who like don't practice.
No, I
the
haven't
thing at
watched
all, like,
Last
commenting on it from
Airbender.
afar, it can like derail. And
Can't
be
say
weird,
I've watched
right?
that
But so you had this
movie for
tradition then
brown
of
people.
people coming onto the internet trained in the ludologist or narratologist tradition.
Can't say I've done that.
Who then want to critique stuff, but actually their main goal is to display themselves as a smarty pants and like ego boost themselves, right? And that's the root of bad criticism anytime, right? Like good criticism should actually be rooted in helping people and trying to spread good understanding, right? And not about projecting ego. And human beings being what they are, it's just very easy for things to re-devolve back into projecting ego at any time. But so when Braid came out, okay, so I was really invested in an aspect of Braid, which was part of what I was doing was releasing a thing that
Oh, you guys can't see
demonstrated
it.
you can make a thing that is blatantly an art game. I just dropped something on the floor by shaking the desk. You can make a thing that is blatantly an art game, and that is a thing that you could do, and it could be good, right? Because prior to that, like games had always had an element of art, but like they didn't take themselves seriously as potentially being art very well. And so I was like trying to do this thing. And so I did that, and then a bunch of people were like being critics, and they were critics of the story of the game as if that was all that mattered. Like in this game that I had worked so hard on all these other things. And I got mad and I was like, you guys are a bunch of bozos. You're ignoring everything else about the game so that you can put on your smarty pants and talk about the story. And yeah.
Troops.
That riled me up at that time. At this time, I've sort of realized maybe that's inevitable, and arguing with people who have a relatively uninformed viewpoint like that is not a very productive thing to do. And it's not really, I mean, the better use of my time is to keep making things that are good. And if the things are good enough and stand the test of time well enough, eventually at least some cadre of people will get what's going on, and those
Facts.
will be the smart people, and that's fine. And there will always be people who are not being the smart people, and you can argue with them, and it just doesn't seem very productive in the end. Because you know what? Most of these people who I argued with
Are dead
most
now.
people don't think about
They're dead.
today. They just did not resonate onward through time as people with
Now they're dead.
strong viewpoints that provided a lot of value to people, right? And Rez, on the other hand, there are plenty of game creators who were around then who are still around today. And so where do you put your energy? And I think making the best things is so hard that I really would rather put my energy into that. And so the criticism thing now, it's there. There's way more game critics than ever before because you can go like on YouTube direct to the people and whatever. And some of those people are really smart. Some of those people have views of games that I don't feel are very sophisticated. And that's
Ooh.
just how it is. And I'm just pretty far from that.
I'm calling the FBI and Jeffy.
And it's
Okay.
actually healthy for me to be
Fuck your
far
own
from
face, fat ass.
it,
Wish I
which
could,
guess is the
kiddo.
thing, like,
Damn.
once you've got 18,000
Did you watch Project Hail Mary? Yeah, I did watch Project Hail Mary, actually. Funny you mentioned that. I did actually see Project Hail Mary.
hours of experience in it. This is the other thing that I had, especially with Braid, but also a little bit on The Witness, and is part of why I didn't really read reviews and stuff. When you've got 18,000 hours in something, if you read a review of your game by somebody who has 100 hours experience in the thing, they have a very coarse understanding relative to yours. Like I was saying, even if they're like a super fan of your thing, the stuff they're going to say can be very coarse and abrasive because, like, again, they didn't train in Kung Fu for 18,000 hours. They trained in Kung Fu for 100 hours, you know? And like, so the things that they're going to say,
This is such a bad, like, defense. I like him, but it's such a bad defense. It's like, no, just because you made it for... Like, if my game sucks and it's not fun, and somebody plays it, and everyone's saying it sucks, and that's the review of it, that I don't like this, I don't like this, then I'm gonna be wrong. You know, I could be wrong about stuff. I don't think I'm wrong about this. I think I have enough instinct to know this is fun. What I'm doing is fun. What I'm adding is fun. But we'll see. We'll see when push comes to shove. JF Gareppis, what is it? Planetary Insemination. Yeah, I think he needs to change the name, honestly. Like, my name isn't that good, Schaefer Island. But I think he needs to change the name of his game. There should be no game with the name Insemination unless it's like a porn game. Unless it's one of those anime games with naked women. The Insemination is not a good name for a video game.
That they liked are going to even like maybe disregard all these things that
But
you
I'm sure it's going to be a fun game, though. It's like Spore, right?
worked on really hard or whatever. It's just the nature of the thing. And so I found myself in a few reviews of The Witness that I did read, I found myself feeling shitty about good reviews from people who like the game. You know, it was a very weird mental space to be in. And I was like, okay, this is bad.
It's
Like-
JFG's humor. Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's fair. I think the problem with JF and I both have is that we're too smart for like the internet. So we like just are weird freaks and everybody hates us. And they make fun of us behind our back and troll us.
I'm putting all this nuance into this game. I know that people get it. Different people maybe get different subsets of the nuance, and there's maybe some power law thing where a lot of people don't get much of it and a small percentage of people get a lot of it. But like central to the idea of building something that is trying to be deep and subtle and nuanced is that I have the ability to do this. And if I filter my ability to do this based on reading reviews and like deciding it's not important, that'll change what I do as a creator, and I don't want that. So I just
But then I'm like, well, legendary for what? There's nothing.
He's
John's
on the
we
stand
have
up.
an actual legendary game developer with us. You don't need to try to hype up the showcast. We're all good.
Thank you. But it's great to say that because you got to remember that you're legendary in the web development space because you're that one guy that always knows what he's talking about, just absolutely ravaging people on the internet, and so you're
All
the
right.
legendary game developer.
Maybe infamous.
I also heard direct from the source that Casey, you're the one who helped come up with the idea for Braid.
That's not really true. That was just, it was a mailing list. We can tell that story, John, if you want to tell that story. But it was sort of just like a mailing list argument.
Yeah.
that was it.
No, but it is true. So back, I mean, whatever year this was, 2002 or something.
It was
when this
ancient
argument was
history.
happening?
You were
Yeah.
still at a AAA gaming at that point, right?
I
only
read
vague- like-
2004 in my research, but yeah,
Okay.
something like that.
Well, it might have, the actual mailing list argument might have been earlier,
Okay.
but like I was sort of doing a mixture of like contracting for AAA studios and then sort of working on my own little games, right? Which often didn't go anywhere because like many people, I would sort of work on something for a little bit and then my motivation for it would fizzle out or something. So I was in this mood of like, I want to do something really cool. I'm not figuring out what that is, right? So, and then, okay, so there was an argument with, it's probably okay to name drop some of the other people in the argument. So Casey was in there. Doug Church, who was a guy whose career started at Looking Glass on like the Thief game.
Let's spawn in some bugs. Oh, the game sounds. Oops.
And stuff like that, and who still in gaming today, working on some major things.
I think we actually mentioned him yesterday, right? He's the one who
Yes.
invented church.
Yes.
He made
Okay.
church numerals, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
His father invented church.
And Church's thesis also. Yes.
Yes. And then Mark LeBlanc, who's also a guy, if you look up his credits
LeBlanc.
in the game
LeBlanc.
industry, you know, they're substantial. And so they were all just trying to figure out, you know, game design of the future. And the original Prince of Persia Sands of Time had come out. Not the original Prince of Persia, but the original Prince of Persia remake that had like Rewind in it, which has also since been remade, I think, which is why I have to specify that, right? But so this came out, it did it did rewind for the first time that I recall seeing that in a game. Maybe somebody else. Anytime you say this
Blinks
thing
the
did it
Time
first,
Sweeper may have had it already.
I think that was after, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I
gonna
honestly
spawn
don't
in a
know, but
spider
somebody
here
will
one
be like,
second.
actually,
Yeah,
a,
there's somebody.
a
Somebody will.
PC Junior game did this.
Yeah, yeah.
What was
Am
that?
I right?
Prime?
That was PlayStation 2, the remake.
It was on all
It
platforms.
was on
I think.
everything.
Yeah,
it was
but it was that
cross-platform.
era, right? It was like the PS2 era. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Sorry.
Whatever was 2002.
Yes, you are
to
correct. It would have
2003.
been PS2. Yeah, PS3 was not out yet.
Hey, is that HTTP? Get that out of here. That's not how we. For you.
So it's
Dude.
okay. So it started talking about like, well, this is cool. Obviously, they could have done a technically better job. It was kind of shoehorned into the game design and stuff, right? And so, but then there was also this thing where like you had rewind, but you also had a traditional game where you have lives and like you run out of rewind juice, and then you get killed, and then your game.
Yeah, see a spider?
It all seemed very cumbersome. And there was just this argument about what is the best way for games forward. And one thing that Casey said was like, look, this is a technical capability. Just like you have the technical capability.
See how I got the
to, like,
spider going in
rewind a
here?
movie. Back in the days, so a VHS tape in a VCR was an appropriate metaphor still at this time. So he was like, you know, you should really be
What do you guys think
able
about
to
that?
rewind any. Yes.
Right here.
Oh wow.
Look at that.
I don't even have one of those.
Hey, does that look cool?
I had props. I have props ready for this. You think I'm not prepared for this conversation?
Yeah.
Come on.
So just like
You guys
you could
like that?
rewind, one of those, this should be a technical feature in games going forward. And other people in the argument were like, no, you can't do that because it takes away the tension of maybe dying if you can undo anything. And there were points on both sides of the argument, but everybody was also just like busy and doing their own projects, and so nobody actually followed this up with action. And then I was between I wasn't even really a participant in the argument. I might have
Giant
dropped
enemy
some
spider,
side
sick as hell.
comments.
Yeah, honestly,
I
it's
was
kind
not
of cool.
one of the main people with strong opinions.
Honestly,
'cause
it's
I didn't
kinda
know.
cool, dude.
It wasn't something that I really thought about. And then I was on vacation. I was like, okay, it's time to start a new thing. What if I do this rewind thing and then do it so both at a technical level that's
So we have that, and then we also
goes to the
have
core of the system. So it's built into the game. It's not like shoehorned on to
is it?
reverse state on some
There's a
other
laser
system
beam
that-
enemy, and then there's a
that
jumping
it's
beam
fighting
enemy.
with,
A
right?
shift J for the
and then
jumping beam
also
enemy.
just design the game design around it. So if people are saying it removes the tension of dying, okay, so we're just not going to have that in the game. Let's see if we can replace that with something else that's a different kind of interesting than. Because, you know, if you play a bunch of games and all these games are about, I'm worried that I'm going to get killed by a monster, they could have different moods and graphical styles and stuff, but at some point you're playing the same thing over and over. And the mindset, so I had been doing this thing at the Game
I thought I had a
Developers
multiple-
Conference
another,
called the
magazine,
Experimental
and I have no
Gameplay
ammo,
Workshop,
though.
where we just try to think every year about, look at examples of things that people had done that were different and new and be like, what can I do that's different and new? And so I was like, okay, let's just do that and just see where it goes. And yeah, that's how it started.
And
Long answer. Sorry, I'm known for long rambling answers. So
This is the stand-up,
how it
okay?
is.
If
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
anything that's canonical about all stand-ups, it's that there's someone that always has a long answer, and that this is a good thing.
yeah.
And
Okay.
I will make it worse by saying the reason that I had made that comment on that mailing list in the first place was because I was playing through some old games from the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I was playing them on an emulator. And emulators,
Right.
even in that era, had added the ability to like fast checkpoint. So you could kind of just like, you basically could rewind. I don't remember if the emulator that I was playing had literal rewind, but it had the ability to just like wail on a button as often as you wanted to just save your state. So every time you like walked into a room of something, you could just save. And I was like, you know, for playing through these games, that's actually a lot more satisfying because it's like I can control how much replay I have to do of this game. And it just made it a more pleasant experience to like
I guess I have
experience
to
the game,
spawn it
honestly.
in here.
So that was why I even posted it. That was it.
Casey, you're clearly outing yourself as not a real gamer right now, because obviously real gamers would
Save
never.
scummer. Casey outed
Dude,
himself
save
as a
scumming
save
right there
scummer.
so bad.
Well, not really, because the most nerdy. I mean, I'm saying this as a joke, obviously, but like the most people who sink the most time into games are like the tool assisted speedrun guys.
I was yep.
Which like that is
Okay.
not fun at all. But they also produce the absolute most hardcore speedrun of a game that you will ever see, right?
That's true.
So
I was just on my way to tool assisted speedrun, guys. Like
yeah,
I
you
wasn't
invented the
safe
tool
scumming.
assisted speedrun.
Yeah.
I
But
was
then
just
unfortunately got hit by a build system he wrote for C and just never quite got to tool assisted.
I don't see the problem. It's fine. So, anyway.
So that yeah, well, so that's actually good because that kind of leads into one of the first questions I was hoping we could talk about. Like, because I know a decent amount about sort of how you got started thinking about Braid and a little bit to
Isn't
The
that cool,
Witness.
though?
I'm interested to know sort of like
Isn't that
how
really
did you
cool?
get into
I like it.
thinking of the idea of your upcoming game. And like we'll get there, of course, but
Yeah.
like obviously we want to talk about
What do you guys
your
think? What are some
language and,
other
like, making
ideas?
an
What are
actual
some
game.
other bosses you think would be cool? So we got like the jumping bean, we got the spider. What are some things we could add?
a bunch of other stuff there too. So I'm interested to hear like when those decision points happen.
Then we have turrets. I haven't tested them out, but let's see. So we can just place turrets, right? I gotta look how turrets are set up in are set up in what's it called? That game, Brotato, and how they're earned. So I can figure out how to set up like turrets properly. Because this game is obviously inspired by Brotato. I'm gonna set it up where you can get multiple weapons running at the same time. A juiced up bear or other angry animal. I don't know if I can do that because that's like the 3D model too. I guess you could do that. It's just like we'll just run at you and crazy kickback. All right, we'll do the one. Let's do another mini boss. This one is a giant bear that runs near the player, then makes an outline on the ground really quickly while paused, charging up a run, then runs really fast at the player, and if it hits the player, does a lot of damage and also a huge kickback effect on the player. Sounds good. I should add turrets to my game. Wait a second. Medium visual damage applies. But yeah, so the room changes as you go along. Turrets look kind of nice, honestly. Don't even have to do shit. I'll have to see how that performs on the computer when I'm not streaming. I'm gonna see this actually. Chance to deal 2x critical hit. Looks clean. Yeah, that's true. It does, but the FPS it needs to be made better. I don't know why it's so slow. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Overlay 3D. Yeah, when you die, it shows you how you die. Isn't that cool? Alright. That's kind of good. But yeah. And that's, once again, we're making it so like we have the one game mode that we can, like, it's a very simple game mode, right? It's like the potato game mode. But if we can get that working and have that working well, then we can add those features into the dungeon. And then once we have that mode working, we can then put that on itch. We can put that on itch, and then, you know, and then I can have a link, like, add to wishlist on Steam, to the Steam one, and then have a playable, slice of the game.
But when you're like, I think it's time to just write a new language for this game.
Yeah.
It's the other way around, I think.
Seeing how you died is sick. Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. If it's really accurate, who knows? But I mean, it's like a little like fun, like.
It's time to write a new game for this awesome language, is what you're trying to say?
A little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, the idea for the language came before I decided what game to use it on, for sure. I don't know which order should I answer these questions in.
Let's start with what motivated you for order, because the big thing is that we're just going to go to very technical, so it's very good so that most people that are listening can have a chance to understand more about you and your decision-making process,
All right,
and then we can get into
so we're
going to
talk about the design idea and stuff to ground it, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so, usually every time I finish a game, it leaves me with interesting ideas to do in a follow-up game, but the follow-up game usually is really different from the previous game, because that's just how it, like, if you start with the actual idea that you want to do, then different forms of game mechanics or structure or whatever might do that idea better. Whereas I think a lot of the game industry likes to do sequels just because it's safe commercially and all that. But I've like literally never done a sequel. So in The Witness, it's this game that came out in 2016, so quite a while ago. And the way the game starts is you see these puzzles. They're like little iPad screens mounted in the world really weirdly. And you can trace lines on them, and there's little symbols like in these grids and stuff. And you don't know what the symbols mean. Like, and the game doesn't tell you. And you figure out what they mean just by experimenting. And being an intelligent puzzle player, you slowly build up this idea of what these symbols mean. And then at some point, there's curveballs like, oh, wait, there's a surprise where it does kind of mean what I thought, but there's something deeper about the way this puzzle symbol works. And that's sort of one of the fun things about the game. So I really like that part of that game and that design process. And so after I was done, I was just really interested in this idea. So when I'm designing the symbols, right, at first I was just like, what are some interesting rules that I could attach to these symbols that would make interesting puzzles? But then as I charted out the game ahead of time in my head before building it, I'm like, okay, the interesting part is going to be when we make these combinations puzzles with the symbols coming together. And so we want them to come together and generate surprise. So like one example, not to spoil too much of The Witness, is like...
Big Bongo's banned in chat. That's crazy.
Okay, there's these little
Can't
I
imagine
just
why
thought
that
of them
happened.
as ghost stones initially, but they're
Can't
like
imagine why
rounded
you got
rectangles,
banned in
and
chat.
you have like black and white stones in the beginning, and you're just trying to group them with the line. And then eventually there's multicolors, and you're like, oh, this could apply to any color. And then when there's other symbols, the color of the other symbol matters, and it's not just grouping those things; it's grouping them with anything of that color. So your idea of the rule like expands over the course of the game. Let's say. Okay, so I just became very interested in this idea that what game designers do, in some sense, for any kind of game, not even just puzzle games, is they come up with these rules, but the rules aren't just like, there are fundamental things that the rules have to do. Like if they result in a broken game that doesn't run, that's not playable, right? If they result in a very boring game that you don't want to play, that's really bad. But then, you know, at some point, like a good game is when the rules are designed that they create emergent complex situations out of simple beginnings. And the reason that works is because the simple initial ideas is what can go in your mind and you can understand and can be communicated to you effectively. But then the surprise and the revealing of new things is what keeps you playing because you haven't seen everything yet. There could be more that you could get out of this experience, right? And the thing that I realized about that though, so there's other, this is not just my idea about game design. So there was a very famous, I think it was like Kim Swift at GDC talking
He's dialed in.
how
Wow,
they-
let's see. Probably just like sleeping or something.
She was going to school for nutrition, and I'm pretty good with that shit. We had a lot in common, and she was highly intelligent. We had great conversations prior to coming here. No,
He's not here. He's just chilling out.
money, no sex, no nakedness, nothing. Flirty, but nothing naughty. Anyway,
He's just playing Minecraft, dude.
that day was my
What are you
first
talking
day,
about?
but the second day. I go out, have some fun. I'm telling myself, I don't know where Walking Street is. I don't want to go to Walking Street because I've heard all about it.
Design Portal or something, and they do this thing where they
It's
put a
just boring,
spreadsheet
dude.
and they say like, here's all the object types, and you could put an X in the spreadsheet cell. I'm bringing it back to stand-up style, right? So we got spreadsheets. You put an X in the spreadsheet cell when objects interact with each other's type, and then you want that spreadsheet to be like full of X's or whatever, right?
Interesting.
That's an oversimplified way of talking about it, but you could imagine that, right? So the thing is, game designers don't actually know why that works, okay? So it's like, we can come up with rules and
Well, it's like exponential. There's like an exponential complexity to things where like if you add in a feature to a game or something, it's like exponentially more things you have to worry about. Like, does it break this? Does it break that? But then if you add like mechanics or add ways to do things, then there's exponentially more ways to do things too on the other side. And that's like exponentially satisfying.
design them so that they'll interact. But like, why do they actually interact? Like,
Or
what's the
rather,
end-
probably linearly. There's probably a exponential curve for like how it's you can use things, and then it probably has a linear return because you need exponentially more. Like with anything, like you get high to get the same amount of high, you need exponentially more as time goes on. So it's probably the same thing with like enjoyment.
engine in the universe that makes things interact and generate complexity, right? And this is something that you see in mathematics. So, you know, if you look at like the Mandelbrot set or something, any kind of fractal, you have a very simple equation that when iterated blows out into enormous complexity that you didn't expect there. Or like Stephen Wolfram stuff. He has all these very simple cellular automata, right? So there's something about the universe that does that. And game designers don't actually make that happen, right? It's like we're exploiting an underlying phenomenon about reality that we don't stop to think about anymore because we're too busy actually making games. So I wanted to make a game that was about looking at that very closely. And part of that was like, okay, instead of starting with these simple puzzle symbols, what if the ingredients in the soup that we're going to mix together are themselves games that are already fun and complete by themselves? And then we'll mix those together and they'll blow up into like a big like hyper reality with way more dimensions than you would usually get. So here's the other thing. If you're designing a game, you know, at first you just have some idea and it's usually not as good as you thought. It's like not as fun as you thought or whatever. And so you implement the idea and then
Tossing
you
a
start adding
first pinch in my loud pipe, satisfied AF. That's crazy, Big Mongo. That's actually crazy, dude. That's actually crazy, dude. But I'm happy that you like weed, dude. It's better than marijuana. It's better than alcohol. It's better than the alcohol you used to drink. So might be making you retarded, but at least you're not drunk.
Sophistication to it, or like, oh, this thing happens that I don't like. Let's change the rules to disincentivize that. Or
That is
whatever.
one thing that's kind of crazy. As I gotten older, I realized everybody's on drugs. Like, it's a very weird. I mean, it makes sense. You think about it. It's like if you're not on drugs, you're kind of like crap. Like this is like reality is either you're stupid or you're like reality is really like insane and like really actually bad. But it is actually like a big indictment of society that people are like on drugs 24/7.
And at some point, you iterate on that enough to where it's fun, or you lose out on the game development. But assuming you succeed, you get to the point where it's fun, and then you ship the game because it was so hard to get there that that's basically all you could do, right? And so what happens is games sort of have converged at a certain level of complexity of game design, right? Because the process of making them is always iterating up till you reach that, and then shipping it. And so this was also a way of trying to force ourselves above that ceiling that everybody hits about how complex is the game in terms of the amount of interactivity, because we're starting with things that were already in that zone and then mashing them together and having, I don't know, it's like if you have a vector and you
That's like what I've seen a similarity in a lot of these places. That's a similarity in all these people who have had successful games, though, which is interesting, is that all of them have said, in one way or another, it's like their game was like, it was this game, but with this twist. So that's another reason why I think my game is going to be, people are going to like it. Because it is like a twist. It's like a roguelike, but it also has like with Tarkov and also like the potato type stuff. So it's very interesting that they're saying like it's kind of like what he's saying, where it's like, we started on this and then we added stuff together. And that's just another way of saying it. It was like this game, but with a twist where we added more stuff,
the outer product with another vector, you get a square matrix, right, for the math people. And then you could outer product another vector and you get a cube.
I would knock your teeth out of your skull.
And then you
Dude,
get like
that's
a
messed up.
4-dimensional thing. And so we have kind of this
That's real messed
4-dimensional
up, dude.
space of games interacting with each other. So that was the idea.
And that's like you don't have to give any spoilers, but that's like the 4 different kind of like lands that we see in the trailer and everything, and each one. So like the idea is, if I'm understanding correctly, each of the like 4 islands, I think you called them or something like that, right? Is like its own. It could be its own game, effectively.
It is its own game. In fact, when you start playing them, they're completely separate from each other, and they have separate characters, separate stories, and separate game mechanics, right? And then later on. We show this in the trailer, so it's not that big of a spoiler, but later on, some dimensional combination things happen and the games then come together and you start playing with the magic mirror from this game, with like the monsters from this game or whatever. And you see how those rules play out and
Doesn't your best buddy Jimbo smoke weed too?
Really
yeah, dude, but he's chill about it. When he smokes weed, it's just like a chill thing. It's not like an insane person thing.
whole game is the fun part, but yeah.
So I wanted to throw one thing in here just because to the extent that I have anything to contribute to this podcast, it's like digging into the back catalog that some people might not know about. Would you say it's worth talking a little bit about Raspberry here? Because I kind of see that as sort of like an early experiment with a different sort of like a continuous version of this that you didn't decide to make into a full game, but it kind of feels a little similar.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you give a little background on what Raspberry is?
That's, that's what I was prompting. Sorry.
This is something you could actually download the old version of. There is I actually worked and never re-uploaded. I have a much more sophisticated version of this game, but you can download the one. I made Raspberry and a couple other prototypes while I was working on Braid. I was feeling burned out like 2 years into development, and I spent like 2 months just working on other side projects. If you search for my homepage, I still have some like hand-coded HTML thing that I don't really maintain. Like every 7 years, I'll go and like tweak
Put
something.
under construction on it. You're like,
I never did. I never had the guy with the little pickaxe or whatever.
Marquee tab.
But there's a game prototype on there called Raspberry. It only runs on Windows. Sorry. And so the idea behind this was a little bit different, but it was about combining game mechanics. And I didn't think about it this way, but it was like, okay, what if you made a game where you tried to use game mechanics like music, where you'll have one interaction that's like you're trying to click on things or something, right? And you have another interaction that's like you're trying to dodge things. And what you could imagine some number of very simple things like that. And then like in a song, you might have like drums come up really loud for a little bit and do stuff. And then you'll have, guitar come in or whatever. And sometimes you have everything and sometimes you have one thing. It was about just composing these gameplay interactions in that way over time. And it was a good experiment. What the conclusion that I came to was you can't exactly do that in the same way that music works, because game design is like fundamentally a little bit lower frequency in the sense that the rate at which your brain can track the changes in what you need to do has some maximum rate before it just is not that fun. But it did work in the sense that like, oh, this is kind of cool and interesting. And maybe I should ship, I would have to dig it out of source control and compile it again, which, oh my God, compiling a C++ program from 15 years ago is difficult. But, yeah, that was related. So I think it goes to show that I've been thinking about this kind of thing generally for a long time. Yeah.
Would compiling a Jai program or a J program or the language program in 15 years, will that be a challenge, or will that?
Well, it depends. So part of the reason we're keeping it in closed beta right now is to give ourselves the permission to change things in a somewhat incompatible way. But because there are like 1,000
As a strategy game player, the function of enjoyment in terms of game complexity peaks at a certain number of variables. Yeah, that's like something I'm not sure about. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's a number for it. Let me copy paste this message you just did into Gemini and just say, is there some study about the maximum number of things? I think it's probably more vague than we think. Is there a study? Thank you. Money. Or not. Yo, 13. Thank you, Cruelty CEO. W Goat.
Cruelty CEO just hosted.
I'm rooting for. I like Cruelty CEO. He's a good guy. He's one of the few people I see doing stuff, and I'm like, oh, this person's actually like a person. They're not like a freak. They're not like trying to make $10 million being a gay type person. Which, maybe that's a bad thing to do nowadays. But W, Cruelty CEO.
We still try to smooth it out. So like what I'll do is I'll say, okay, this feature.
I would 100% be gay for $1 million. Dude, that's a low marketing price. You could do that cheap. You can do that cheap, and yes, you can get that easy with like OnlyFans. You should be gay.
By this other feature, so
Jeffy will pay you $1 million.
First we implement
dude.
them both alongside.
You don't even
each
need to
other,
wait.
right?
Jeffy will pay you $1 million to be gay.
A month later, this one gives you a warning when you use it, right? And then a month later, it gets deleted. But if you take a year off and come back, you might have missed that, and now your program just doesn't compile, right? And there's information in the changelog about why, and sometimes we can even leave error messages that say, oh, this isn't how it works anymore. But yeah, so now there's different levels of changes that are different levels of severity and stuff, right? But what I would say is, okay, so the reason we're doing that is because of my experience with languages like C++, where they had a lot of ideas early on about like what would be really cool ideas and make programming better. And a lot of those ideas are very inaccurate. There were other things that they really should have done early on, like that C didn't really do. And not to blame C, but like in the days of C, it didn't make sense to think in a very clear way about integer types, let's say, because there were just all sorts of computers with all sorts of different word sizes. You didn't know what was going on and like all these things. But like now it's like, it's pretty obvious that like if you have an unsigned 8-bit number, that'll fit into a signed 16-bit number, right? If you just, and that should implicitly cast, but if you have an unsigned 16-bit number and you put it into a signed 16-bit number, you maybe should say that that's what you meant to do. Right. And it eliminates, and like they weren't thinking about that kind of, I'm not even saying that that's exactly the right decision that you should make, but it's like a clear idea that should have come up. Right. And they just weren't thinking about that stuff. And they had all these other things that they added to the language. And And the problem with C++ now, or one of the many problems with C++, I would say there are two core ones that drove me to make a new programming language. One is that C++ is completely saddled with almost all of the baggage of almost every idea that was ever introduced, and there's no way to deprecate things, right? So that's a problem. And so that makes the new features worse. So if you actually have a better feature that actually will help people, it actually doesn't work as well as it should, and it's harder to implement and slower because it has to interoperate with like all this cruft that's like built up over time, right? And so there's a lot of things they just can't really do. Like I haven't tried to use the modules feature. I sort of froze my C++ usage at C++ 11, and even only some of C++ 11. Like I do, you know, probably less severe than, like Casey, you actually use C++. You just don't use most of the features, right? But you use the
I kind
compiler.
of gave up on C++ features a while back.
Yeah. But like Sean Barrett didn't even use the C++ compiler forever, right? Like he was using the C compiler, which was not maintained anymore, but he was like so much faster than the C++ compiler.
Same with Jeff Roberts. Still, I believe to this day, when he has his own stuff, if he doesn't have to interoperate, it's the C compiler only.
And like you can't, so in that dialect of C, the last one that Microsoft made this compiler for, you can't even like declare a variable in the middle of a block, right? Like
What?
Only at the top.
it's bad. Like original C was really different from modern C.
Yeah.
Yeah,
actually, and-
modern C has like added a bunch of those conveniences in now, so it doesn't feel that clunky. You can
By the
program
way,
in straight
modern
C.
C, are we talking like 89? Are we talking 99? 11?
Well, I
Which one?
haven't followed anything since ANSI C, right? I know there's like C99 and stuff. I don't know what those features are. I don't care.
Really, we just mean if you go download a C compiler today, whether it's Microsoft's or Clang or GNU C, they now all have things that you would have been very happy to have way back when, like including like how like a for loop might get scoped for variable declaration.
Oh, yeah.
Or how you would whether you could use declare anywhere, those sorts of things. They didn't have any of that, right? You had to put all of your variables at the very top of the function and all that sort of thing, right? That was still the norm in like the year 2000.
So K and RC, when I was in college, I was.
You guys want
learning
to check
C,
out the
and
bear mini boss, see if it's any good in the game? Yeah,
There
compile
was
it.
this shiny new book that
And
said
then we'll see
ANSI
if the
C
bear
with a big
mini boss
stamp
is
on
any
the
good.
front. But in the used bookstore, they had a book that looked almost the same. It was the same like C programming language book without the ANSI C stamp, and I was like, that's pretty cheap. I'll learn from that book. And that was the K&R version of C. And so I was using compilers at school that could do the newer C stuff, but I didn't know that. And so in K&R C, for example, if you're going to call a function that's in another file because you're organizing your program, you don't declare the arguments of the function. Just whatever you pass to that function, the compiler says, sure, that seems fine, right? And so then you spend all this time debugging because like you passed a double instead of a float, or you forgot an argument or whatever, and you just crashed at runtime, right? There was no static type checking on external functions. So that was a
feels
good
like
time.
my experience with Elixir. I did this very regularly, tried to pass things in and getting the wrong types constantly.
Yeah, it's exactly what you need when you're just trying to learn, It's
Well, we say this, but like, welcome to JavaScript, right? Like fast forward to today, and like a very standard programming language is still in the state where it's like, yeah, I don't know, you just pass something, and
Whatever you
like,
want, man.
Whatever you pass is what gets passed, and good luck.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Right?
to be fair, most modern JavaScript, they use, TypeScript, which alleviates a good portion of those problems.
That's why you got to use Go. Golang is goaded for that.
There's still the problem of outside objects coming in. You have to literally hand validate them with some sort of runtime checking to
You
prove
say
that
most.
they are what they are.
Are you sure most is true here, though?
It's like all like 75% of new projects.
Okay.
It's like some
Okay.
decently good number these days.
Well,
TypeScript
that's-
is pretty
that's
good.
nice.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
nice
know.
for
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I wouldn't be able to tell you, honestly.
the youth of today.
That's nice that the web finally figured out about
Yeah.
types.
My favorite part still is that we take a language that cannot be interpreted and turn it into a language that can be interpreted, and we call it compiling. It is like we're in a very weird world in that side of the universe, but it's very fun. All right, so I want to actually steer away from the. I love the C++s and. Well, actually, I don't. I actually genuinely hate it. But
Yeah.
this is great discussion, all. But I actually want to focus on kind of a question with Jai.
Sure.
or Jay. By the way, do you call it the language, Jay or Jai?
Yeah, I
Or
don't pronounce it.
Or
So-
John's artificial intelligence.
So I have an allergic reaction to one of the so I'm very frustrated with the quality of software broadly speaking, right? And part of that is the culture of what are people thinking when they sit down and make software, right? And there's a pattern that I notice that bothers me that doesn't seem to bother a lot of other people, but both in academia and industry, if you read an academic paper that's about somebody's algorithm, right? There's a very classic form, which is they put the cool name of the algorithm that they made up, like the marketing name, colon, and then they tell you what it means. And Hacker News posts are the same, like Django poop, colon, a thing that converts all your comments in JavaScript to uppercase, right? and like they come up with like the seemingly, this is my cool project name for like something totally stupid. And it's like all the effort goes into thinking about the name, or like thinking that if you make a really neat name, then you've passed some hurdle of being a contributor or whatever. And meanwhile, I'm trying to implement this algorithm from a paper, for example, in a video game, and like realizing that it doesn't actually work. And then sometimes under very strict deadlines where I suffer greatly due to this, and just, it really frustrated me. So this was just like a code name that I made for this language. I don't ever use it. We don't market the language. I don't have a logo for it, which is another thing that people make like first before, and even when it comes to language syntax, like if you start talking about what language
Marketing matters quite a bit. It shouldn't, dude. It really shouldn't. It's like so gay. It's so like clown coded, dude.
have, people will talk about
Like it's Nico coded.
the syntax because it is the most concrete and easy to observe thing, but it also kind of doesn't matter that much. I mean, it does matter at some point, like in the end, once you finally have a tool that you're like, this is the thing I'm going to use day to day for years, then small amounts of friction do add up and they really matter, right? But the problem is that if those are the main things you're concerned about when you're designing a new language, those are relatively shallow problems that you're preoccupying yourself with. And what I found, okay, so let me get back to this other thing that you sort of asked at the beginning, which was like, why did I make the language? Part of it was I was sitting there
I mean, you're right.
using C++ every day. So Casey visited in these days and worked on The Witness. And we had both an annoying like asset processing pipeline for the game, which I won't explain that right now, but it's like, crunching the data that's going to go in the game sometimes would take too long. And that slows down your work process, but also just compiling the game was really annoying. It would take like a couple minutes, which doesn't sound that long, but it like really breaks your flow when you're trying to think about stuff. And it was only a couple minutes because we spent a lot of effort trying to minimize the C++ suffering about how long.
Yeah, it's just like the problem is that you're allergic to it. That's going to be the next wave. It's always this like exponential wave where it's like the wave is like, oh, people are really allergic to marketing, so just be real. And that'll be marketing. It's just be fake real people. And then you're going to be like, what? Just gotta make, you know what I mean? That's what's gonna happen next, where it's like, just be, this person was just real, and that's why they're successful. They didn't game it out, they didn't optimize for it, they succeeded, and that's why you need to just be real. And that'll be the next wave of like marketing, is like weird people being weird.
Take. And so I was like, I have all these problems. Like I was kind of sad and depressed working on this game, even though it was the best thing I had
It's like
ever
people
made.
being real because they're fake.
And it was clear that it was going to succeed at some level. I mean, who knows about commercially, but like artistically, we had at that point succeeded in making a good game. We just had to finish it, right? And I was still bummed out going into the office every day, just working on this thing. And I was like, okay, part of this is the programming language, and part of it is the asset stuff. And the asset stuff we can look at next time we make an engine. The processing, the programming language, though, I would go online and look at what are the conversations people are having, because like there's a C++ committee, right? And then there's other people making other languages, and like why? What are they saying is their motivation? And I would look at the problems that they say that they are solving, and they had very little to do with the problems that I had from day to day that was making it hard, right? And the thing is, like when you're working on a smaller program, or you're working on or you're a new programmer, right? You feel like there's certain things that are serious problems, but actually when you get more experience, you're like, yeah. Like you don't really make that many syntax errors when you type later. But if you're a new programmer, you're like, syntax errors are really, I'm drowning in syntax
They're, like,
errors. This is
baffling.
obviously a
You
big
have no
problem.
idea. You're like, what? Why? What? Yeah.
Yeah, now it is true that better syntax error messages can help people learn really fast, but that's not like a deep. So what I found was that once, and I think this is obvious once you say it.
You ever find
but,
yourself
like,
repeating
once
patterns that
programs
evolve over
get
time?
past
Yeah,
a
dude, of
certain
course. Everyone just repeats patterns in different ways.
size of code, and or because it's like some kind of product function, and or a certain complexity of like the internal data and how it has to be arranged, and like, you know, what the structures look like and what the constraints are. Once it gets past a certain point in complexity, it's just hard to work on the code because it's hard to
I get the videos Paul Talmadge suggests to me on my YouTube channel. That's crazy, dude. I mean, I believe it 100%, but that's crazy.
understand everything and see everything and just know what's going on. And that's kind of the bottleneck, is that it just gets complicated. And so that's what I wanted help with, was like code that just gets really complicated. And I was looking at what people were talking about, and they just didn't have any of that as a concern. And then the other thing, it was compile times, because
Can I inject one thing
Yeah,
there too?
yeah.
Like, when you look at like the biggest thing that frustrates me when I've looked at things like C++ committee discussions, or how they go about like deciding what and how to put in the language, is the mindset, in my opinion, when you're designing a language, has to be that we are trying to make the best possible system for the working programmer. Like the person who's going to sit down and is trying to get their job done that day. That is what you need to, unless you are making, like if you're making some abstract, like, you know, like ML or something like this, or Lisp, and you're intentionally going down that road to make a theoretical language, then that you do whatever you're trying to explore. That's your thing, and that's fine. But if you're like the C++ committee, your job should be to focus on what is going to allow the working programmer to have the tools they need to succeed every day, right? But if you actually look at the way that they make decisions, it's almost all about weird, esoteric, theoretical things. Like,
It's important to
they are
just be aware of what you're actually reacting to. It's the same as just speaking about anything, like how engaging dog should be on a TL. Yeah, honestly, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, the problem with it is streaming. Trying to make money streaming is like, it's like people, it's like if you're reacting, the only thing you react to is like, we're watching this. This is like allergic. Like this content is like allergic to like 95% of people watch his streams. Like legit, easily, obviously. Yo, goated. Like this is just not. People aren't gonna watch this.
Lucky just subscribed on Kick.
Like 95, 96, 97% of people just have no desire to watch this, or won't even understand. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it is important to react to things, but it's like you kind of have to get into the mud and watch Fresh and Fit or Sneako live streams to even have a shot at like having anybody interact at all. But
they will never go like, okay, well, we have to make this thing work because this is what would actually be effective in day-to-day work. So we'll go and we'll deal with ugliness in the theoretical realm or something as a result. They will never make those decisions. And it always ends up feeling a lot like, you know, you're in some like rundown, like dilapidated shack, and someone is like, okay, we've got this beautiful mansion that we're gonna move to, and they're like, whoa, we can't move to that mansion. I planted this tulip bulb back at the shack, and I don't know how we're gonna move that, right? And like literally, like you're reading, like I'm like, what? Like you guys decided you can't do any of these things in the good way that you would have done them because of this one little thing, and no, like this is why the language keeps getting worse. And so I do think like there's
why doesn't C+? Why does C+ need an added plus? I don't know. I think it's because plus is iterative. I think it's, if I had to guess, C++ is like, it's like plus is like a programming like command. I don't know the exact terminology. I would never care about the terminology of stuff to my own detriment, but it'd be like 1 would be like 2.
They've
I'll look it up.
calcified this very academic process for like moving the language forward, and it always results in substandard features over and over and over again. So anyway,
and can I also say it does feel a little bit different too if it felt like, I mean, we already made the joke about it being impossible to build an old C++ project. It'd be one thing if I could pull any C++ project out from any time and they're like, you have a random one from 1997, you can compile.
Yeah,
But
no, you
I feel
can't.
like I never, so it's not even like you're getting this feeling.
Yeah,
of like,
that's why it is. I was right. It says the name C++ was chosen over C++ primarily as a programming pun that signifies an incremental improvement of the original C language. The increment operator in the C language ++ is the increment operator which increases the value of a variable by 1. By naming the language C++, its creators indicated it was the next or upgraded version of C. Yeah, that's a theory of mind. That's called me emulating what I think maybe would happen. And I was right. I could have been wrong, but, you know, that's just showing, like, I'm, like, tapped in, dude.
Like, oh, I have this rock solid thing I can always build. It's like, we're going to keep all the features around, but you still can't build it? Like, what is that?
you get nothing from it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's like the history of all of computers, really, is like there's these stated reasons why things are the way they are.
Yeah, Martin, there's also a thing that you're saying with the amount of things. Once you hit a certain amount of things, stuff becomes less enjoyable. And that is, let's see, let me find it. I looked it up. The U-shaped relationship, Berlin's, let's see. I gotta make sure I can look at it without the IP address showing on screen. I'm on a VPN, doesn't matter. But you don't always want to. Frontier Sin. Yeah, here it is. Let me copy it. Linking versus complexity, decomposing the inverted U graph, whatever. And essentially, there's a U curve where, and like is it where it's like it's a U shape, I guess. Here we go. Where there is in complexity of systems, there's a peak amount, and then the more complex it gets, it becomes less enjoyable, if that makes sense. So like the more it's like starts here, not complex, it becomes more and more enjoyable. And then once it reaches a certain level of complexity, it starts actually going from more enjoyable to less enjoyable. So I didn't know that. That's interesting. I got to figure that out. I don't think we're there yet with the game, but we might be actually. We might be there with the game. We'll see. Yeah, decomposing the inverted U curve, the middle finger of complexity. That's what they should call it. The middle finger of enjoyment. And that would be like related to, there's like in the middle part, there's a U curve, upside down U. Inverted U, the sweet spot is hit fairly early for most people. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's why I'm having the game, let me see if it's ready compiling. Dude, if it's not, it just gets all jammed up. Aborted signal terminated program. I don't know if I'm able to play it again because I just don't have it. My computer just doesn't build. I mean, it makes sense to trying to build a program while streaming. Is probably not the best if I don't have like an insane rich person computer, which I should honestly. I should have set that up properly, but yeah, I think that's why I have like the wave game and then also the full raid game, like the full multi-floor level raid game. Is I feel like the wave game you can make that into like a Brotato clone, not clone, but like very heavily inspired Brotato, heavily inspired by Brotato, and that's compelling itself. But then with the same mechanics, we can bring that down to an actual like roguelike where you're building up stats and stuff.
You need to do it this way to get this benefit, and then you actually ask if you get the benefit, and it's like, well, we get 5% of the benefit.
Yeah, they're like, no, not really. Yeah.
So question would be, is that a design by committee?
So like we'll make the arcade game even more fun. I think that's like a fun idea. It's like make a really addictive thing, which is like the wave based shooter, and then have that really, really arcadified. Like that's really how I see it. Like make it like an arcade game where it's like really, really fun, but it's not like hard to do. It's just kind of like comfy. And then from there, maybe people will say, "Oh, I like the game. I want to try out the other thing," and people will like the other things, a lot more depth to it.
Because John, you're effectively the decider of the language. You're the benevolent dictator of it.
Yeah.
And so do you avoid a lot of those problems because you look at the tulip and go, I'll just plant a new one. Like you can just make that decision. You don't have 5 people of the 10 being like, that tulip is life. I cannot let go of the tulip. Like you don't have to make those fights. You can just say, no, this is the way. It's the best way.
Yeah, what I would say that the problem still occurs even if you have a benevolent dictator, because you do want to listen to your audience a little bit, at least, as part of a grounding. Like, so even if you think you have the best ideas and nobody else can have better ideas, which is not usually exactly true, you still need to listen to people to know, like, okay, I have an idea that doing this feature this way will help a certain class of program. There's people out there writing that class of program. They can tell you if that feature actually did what you meant it to do or not. You can't quite do all of those yourself because you're, like I said, the real problems happen when you're like deep in a very complex program, and you can write like little demo programs to test your features out and stuff, but you just don't have enough human life years to like write all these super deep programs. So you need to talk to the people who are using your thing, and they're going to have all different opinions about what you should do, and you need to just like not listen to some of them. Like that's simply how it is, because if you listen to everybody with an equal weighting, it is equivalent to design by committee. And so you just have to say, I'm sorry, it's, for some people, it's not that you necessarily have a worse idea or anything like that, but this language has to pick a direction to go, and it's just not that direction, and maybe a different language could go that direction, right? And maybe that's better. Like we're just, you're doing some hill climbing process, right? Where hill climbing is this thing in computer science where you start
Finally, thank you very much. Big shout out.
On some landscape, and you only can look nearby, probably.
I think her audience, I think Brittany's audience is going to really like Jonathan Blow, legendary game developer, stand-up number 39, 2-hour video. I think that'll really probably, if I had to guess, really hit the spot. People watch Politically Provoked.
The way that seems the best, but you don't exactly know. And this is an entire class of algorithm in computers, right? And so you're kind of doing that. But you have to, if you listen to everybody, you'll add up all these vectors that point in all these different directions, and they will sum to 0, and you will not go anywhere, right? And so so you just need to be willing to be a little bit, like not even exactly disagreeable, because you don't have to argue with people or anything, but it's just like, look, that's just...
Noted. Thank you very much.
Hilton Headgrow, I
appreciate
just
it.
gifted 10 subscriptions on
Albie, that's very helpful. I needed that. Thank you. I wasn't going to be able to pay rent, but that helps me.
Appreciate that you want this thing.
W.
It's just not what we're doing here.
Yo, Lock Bloke. Thank you for the follow-up.
Yeah, something like that.
Have to,
Dude,
you have to not
and an
be a
ideology,
super
right?
pleaser.
Like here is what we're trying to accomplish that includes some things that you will take seriously and some things that you will just decide we're not going to do. Like, right? If you tried to do, I mean, C++ also has a little bit of that problem where they don't have a strong idea of exactly what we are trying to accomplish at the end of the day.
Everything.
So, right?
all
Everything and nothing,
all the things.
sort right? Like they all, it's everything and nothing somehow, right?
Yeah.
And so it also pays to have, separate from design by committee or not. If you're gonna have a committee design things, it helps
right
to
now
have
I'm
an
showing
overriding idea of
a
like we're
2 hour
trying
long
to
video.
get the language to this place and accomplish this thing, so that we have
Watching
like,
at
a
1x
guiding
speed.
principle. Like I said, like make the working programmer's life easier every day or something. Like there's something like that you can point to, so that somebody on the committee can argue, look, we're just gonna have to trash the tulip because we really need, like, this mansion is gonna be so much more helpful for everybody. Yeah, and we need it to be good or whatever. But anyway, I interrupted John when he was about to talk about compile time, so maybe we can.
Oh yeah, well so
Go
there
to
are
Headgrow, I
there are
just gifted
friction
1
things. And
subscription
so when
on
people
Kick.
talk about like, oh, the syntax needs to be good or whatever, they're talking about the minute-to-minute pleasure of using a language, and for some reason people focus on that. And then, it takes 2 minutes to compile Hello World now. And it's like, what happened? How am I supposed to have a thought process? How am I supposed to develop when it's like so painful that I just sit there and wait to see what happens? And so that was an emphasis from the beginning. Also because I come from the world of video games. Like even a video game 10 years ago did an insane amount of computation in one frame. especially on the GPU, which is a highly specialized, very parallel thing. But even if you factor that out, the amount of stuff that a video game does just to figure out what to put on a screen is very high, at a very high rate. And
That's true.
it's because that was just like the fitness function under which the industry evolved. People wanted games that rendered smoothly and looked good, right? And like for some reason, no such fitness function exists in programming languages. There is one, but it's like, it's something about how cool of an anecdote can you post on Hacker News or something, right? It's like it's not really to do with usability. I mean, at some level there is, I don't know, it's complicated, but, you know, so looking at these compilers, I was just like, look, I've written compilers before, never as serious as this one, but like in college, I wrote like 12, instead of doing my homework and doing classwork, I wrote like 12 compilers for different languages. And so I knew how it worked and I knew what they were doing under the hood. And I was like, it's way less computation than a game does actually. And so it should be really fast. And so, you know, part of the goal was to just try and fix that. And because, you know, we've done a
Our
pretty good
compiler's
job.
really hard to make. I think so. He's very smart. He's like genuinely a very smart person.
So our 300,000 line game does a full build. We don't have incremental builds because that's, in my experience, another source of bugs and confusion. Like even
This is what an actually smart developer sounds like, not like Curtis Yarvin. This is what an actually like good developer who actually knows how to do things. His games I don't really care for because I don't, whatever. But like he's actually intelligent and he's actually capable of doing things.
Or you have to think from minute to minute about what are all the different ways that a thing might be building and which one is selected, right? It's just another roadblock. And so it's just like, look, it's a full build all the time. Right now, that takes about 2 seconds for a debug build, which is longer than I wish it was. I wish, I feel like it should be like a quarter of a second. But, you know, we
That's
reached
true,
the
Martin.
point where
I think he's talking
with the
about.
team
I think he
size-
was talking about like he said when he was like in high school or something. He made like 10 compilers for fun.
that we have, it's hard to push that number down without concerted effort, and we're still trying to ship the game and all that, right? But that's still, you know, a lot of these other languages that have been made in the past 10 years, how long does it take them to compile a 300,000 line program? Like way, way, way longer. And it's just due to like decisions that are made about how the language works.
Yeah, 2 seconds is a lot less of a temptation to pull out my phone and forget everything that I was doing than 2 minutes or 20 minutes.
Yeah,
right?
it's like just short enough because if you turn around to do anything, the prompt will come back up, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Dang,
It's actually like 1.7.
Personally, I think it's really impressive. 300,000 lines for 2 seconds in modern development that is genuinely unheard of. Because you know, even in my personal, interpreted languages, as of recent, it often takes more than 2 seconds for significantly less lines. So this, you know, that is actually in modern sense a very impressive feat.
Yeah, so that's something that our beta users enjoy, you know, significantly, is that sped up iteration.
That's crazy though.
I know we've got a hard stop. I got a few last quick questions for you, if that's all right. So
Sure.
They might not be quick, so then you don't have to answer them too. So we'll just
one word answers.
All right, okay.
Good, because I got some too.
All right, here you go. Do you think that AI is going to save the games industry by forcing RAM and GPU prices up so high that people actually have to care about performance?
Interesting take, Teach.
I'm not sure. Okay, we'll not try to one word answer that. Here's the thing.
You can also include web development as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't do web development much ever.
Yeah.
But like so this is a problem. Like games for a while was known as the place where there were still a lot of really good programmers because we were like forged in this fire of really difficult stuff, and that's become increasingly untrue. I think game programmers are like reverting to the mean, and so it wouldn't be too bad. I don't think that, like, I think things are going to adjust and RAM prices are going to come back down pretty soon. This is just a short frequency trend like all of these.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, like I think he's wrong in that. I think he's wrong in that.
Prime, you want to ask one? We can alternate.
Yeah. Common Wisdom says, or at least Common Wisdom on Twitter, so may not be actually wisdom or common. It suggests that.
Yeah, because it's like the better AI gets, the more valuable. This is my whole thing with like Venice, which has been crashing, so it's kind of annoying. Not really crashing. It's not gone up 20% in the day or in the week. But the better the models get, the better the inference. Especially inference, not just training, but inference. Which is essentially like what we see, not we're making the model. It's like we put input and then it gives an output. The better it gets, the more valuable hardware gets, because exponentially you can run exponentially more, if it makes sense to you. Basically, it's like if I can show you like a good point, an expression of what I. Whoops. No, not that. It's like if if like you need, to get an answer. To get an answer, you need something this size, right? Get one answer. And then you go to, then RAM will be worth X amount of time to get the answer. How much is the answer worth to you? That's how much the RAM is worth to you, right? A little bit less, right? So there's 2 sticks of RAM, right? But if you only need this much computer hardware to get this answer, now this right here is worth whatever this was worth. Because this is the value that you're extracting. All right, this is the value that you're creating with the, the intelligence. So whatever dollar value that was at, right? If you can do that same thing with this much hardware, all of a sudden this much hardware becomes as valuable as this much hardware, because it's creating this much value. So you're willing to pay this much value minus $1, right? And if this is this much value minus $1, you're willing to pay that much for because you make $1, right? Then this, by necessity, which would be worth 1/5 of this in the past, or 1/5 of this in the past, is now 5x in value, because it can now create 5x the value. And so I think as LLMs get more efficient, you actually have, and this is like actually something to clip, because it's like so next level thinking. This is like literally like Bataillon, Accursed Chair level, like mind-bogglingly obvious when you hear it, and it will age extremely well. But like, if this can create this much value, all of a sudden, this thing though, is gonna 5x in value. And why, we know for a fact that LLMs are going to get better. And it's not just in the training, it's also in the inference. And there's so much room, we're not there yet, but eventually we're going to reach a point in the curve. Like the curve in terms of models, in my opinion, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like in terms of, because you need exponentially more compute to train exponentially large models. I forget what's called, a log function. I don't know. But then because of that, it's like at some point, the value is going to go from, hey, how do we get more and more hardware, to, hey, it's more cost effective to, we're on this curve, do the same exact curve, move from this one, because we've gone over here, to move over to the next curve of value, which is same exact curve, but instead of making a bigger and bigger model, it's like, how do we make a more efficient model? And really, all this is that graph I was showing you guys, which is the the filtering out, where it's like the 90, or maybe let's say 90% of people, 90% of people are like amount of effort, slight amount of effort, are totally fine. But once you get past a slight amount of effort, that's going to filter out 90% of people to ever getting past it. And the further down the curve you go, the more effort you go, the less people there are going to be filtered by the increase in difficulty, because they've already invested. If you've invested 5 years in understanding things, what's another week of learning a new project, right? Whereas somebody who's never even they go on Kick every day and they watch a streamer, and then they whatever, they watch Kavicular and they argue about politics on Twitter all day, right? Spending a week learning about programming language or something, What? No, I'm not going to do that. That's too much work. I don't even know what that's going to do. All right. So that's like, you know, they're going to be filtered. Whereas somebody who spent 5 years thinking about programming and working on programming, like, oh yeah, I'll spend a week learning this XYZ, you know, language. But it's the same curve as it's just a different expression. It's kind of, I think it's either an integral or a derivative. And that's too far, you know, above my pay grade. But it's essentially, this is the same exact curve, where it's basically like, this is actually displaying, it's got to be a derivative, right? It's a derivative of it, because it's essentially one level up, where this is just, this graph right here is literally just, while this is like saying the amount filtered out, the percentage or the amount filtered out over effort, this is the, what would it be? This is what it would be, a percentage. Actually, it would be the opposite. That would be the opposite, right? So like this. Because then you'd be like, the amount remaining or something like that. I don't know. But hopefully that makes sense. Foundries have 5 to 10 year lead times. The only solution is to build more foundries. Trump just needs to dump $50 billion into making America into a world leading domestic chip manufacturer. Is he doing that though? Is he doing that? Hopefully he's doing that. Yeah, derivative. Yeah, but it would be this would be a derivative, a rate of change of this. Right? So you get rid of this right here. This is the derivative of this graph. We go like this. You know. Anyway. Or something. I don't know. Now I'm not even thinking about it. Right? But you guys get what I'm saying. Like, it's going to move from the making a bigger model to exponential benefit of like making models more efficient. The more models become more efficient, RAM, you know, hardware goes from being able to create this much value from this much value to this much value, because it's a new one of these things, right? When I create this much value, it's therefore worth X amount of money times 5, right? If it's worth this much. And now I can go from here to this much. It's now this amount of money, money X times 5. Because now I can create 5 times the value. 5 times the value equals 5 times the, you know what I mean? 5 times the price. So, yeah, I don't really think it's going to go down in value. I think it's like, it probably, honestly, RAM is probably one of the best bets you can make in terms of like investment. Like I would bet RAM is like, in terms of stable, best bet. Like if you're somebody who has like a ton of space, you don't want to gamble on cryptocurrency because that is a gamble. I would bet money that if you put in like, you know, all you're invested in like just RAM, as much as you can get, that's quality RAM, right? Then you probably would, you'll probably, you know, get a better rate of return over the next decade than, you know, anything else that's like normal.
The problem also,
although the only real risk of that would be like, them, like, there's some new technology that gets like released, and that will be like the Grok chips. But right now we're not there yet. Like, it'll take some time for the LPUs, which are the language processing units, right? LPUs, is that what LPU stands for? Grok LPU, and like NVIDIA, but I think that'll take time. Yeah, LPUs. What does LPU stand for? Language processing unit. Yeah, okay. Crazy, dude. I'm wearing the Sriracha shirt right now too. Yeah, it's a good shirt. Isn't it a good shirt? But yeah, I don't see how rate will go down in value. If anything, it'll get more valuable. So and also it's like, if you're printing stuff, why would you do anything other than that? Because there's like infinite demand for that right now.
You should be making a
I could be
game
wrong,
and
though.
getting it out fairly fast and you know, making sure your concepts are good and getting it in front of people and all this kind of stuff. You shouldn't go and hide yourself away for many years to build one game. You obviously having the time to build a language, build an engine, then build a game, 10 years total. Why did, like, when do you make that decision to say, no, actually, taking your time, taking the 10 years, taking the 5 years, this is actually the more superior choice? Like, when do you know to make that decision?
For me, it usually happens gradually. So all of these projects I would have envisioned being shorter. Like this game was supposed to be
Sound like me.
the proof of concept game with like a simple engine just to prove out the programming language. And it turned it, I just always want to do a good version of everything. And then, I don't know, there was like a lot of weird stuff that happened over development that I won't go into about like what different people on the team want and things. And so we ended up making an engine that's actually more sophisticated than the one for the last game when I was hoping for simple.
Yeah, he's giving $1 trillion to Sam Altman. Yeah. That's what it also is like. It's just like the collapse is done. Like, it's like if I saw a bunch of flies in my kitchen, I wouldn't get mad. I would be grossed out by the flies, right? I'd be grossed out by a bunch of flies. But I'd be like, what's the source of this? And I'm like, there's a hole in the wall, or there's like the window shattered and now they're coming through and the door is cracked open and there's rotting food out. And that's the reason why the flies are there. And it's like, that's where we're at in the country. It's like, there's just flies everywhere. So all the politics is just arguing about flies and they're bitching about flies and yelling about flies. You know, it's like nobody's like, oh, why is there flies everywhere in the kitchen at all? Why is there a mafia controlling the government? Why are there different mafia groups controlling everything? It's always like, oh, this mafia group controlling. Well, why though? How did they get there? Why are they there? And it's like, because it's not flattering. It's not flattering to white people, and it's not flattering to boomers. To, you know, why they're there, and the greatest generation and all that stuff. It's very unflattering actually to the founding stock of America, or like the people who were in, you know, had control of America and gave it away, because those are the flies. So that, you know, if somebody comes, if there's flies in my house, I'm still the owner of the house, and if they run the house, that's like super unflattering to me, because I'm like, you know what I mean? And so all the politics stuff, all the cultural stuff is like arguing about flies in a kitchen, and nobody's like, well, how did they get here? And who's like the person, the reason, like who's the reason there's flies in the kitchen? So yeah, that's why it's like, yeah, it's too abstract. It's just too like this is like too abstract, or like that, even that is too abstract for people. And so that's why nothing will ever get solved. That's why 100% will not get fixed. And you know, it's just wrong. It's just wrong and broken and like stupid. And it's not gonna get fixed. Pipes will burst and transformers will blow up, and like it won't be because of revolution, it'll be because there's nobody's, like everyone in every government agency is going to be like stupid suck ups, and there's gonna be AI everywhere, and there's gonna be just like morons running everything. And it's not gonna be idiocracy, because idiocracy was like comfy. It's gonna be like Brazil.
But it means the game looks really beautiful, and
Will never happen. Boomers are never wrong. It's true, actually. You're right. I'm just gonna, more than likely than not, it's just like the reset. Like when you die, you just reset. You hear a blink of light, and you go back to like the beginning. Then it's just like AI. You're trapped in an AI loop that's like the boomers designed right before they died to like try to change history so they can live forever. So it just keeps running the simulation until like a Zoomer or like Generation Alpha discovers like a way to live forever. So they keep running the simulation right before like they die, in hopes that somebody will like, they keep resetting it to their generation. So like the generations younger than them are old enough to potentially come up with a solution to live forever that they can take advantage of, and it'll just keep happening for eternity until they actually get it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So I think that advice that you said is the right advice for someone new to games or just projects generally. Like, if you have never shipped anything before, you should not spend 5 years in a back room doing something, because you're going to be miscalibrated. You're going to be slow at what you're doing. You're not going to have the right amount of experience. And so being quick early is a good way to just iterate and learn, right? However, somebody's got to be working on really, whatever you want to call it, like moving things forward, and not just trying to release something and make some money. Like there have to be adults.
In my job, we're being forced to train our AI replacements. Is that real? How is that real, dude? How do you train your AI replacement?
room somewhere who are worried
There's
about
no way, dude. That's crazy.
actually improving life in some way. And sometimes that's just really hard. If you could find a way to do that, in fact, there almost always is a way to do that that's actually small and incremental. It's just that's not the way that I think, apparently. But for me, it's a lot more about motivation. Like if you can, yeah, however long it takes to do something that's genuinely meaningful is how long you should take. If that's your lot in life. And that's different from the guy who's like, I'm supporting my family by having a job. That's cool too. That's totally fine. But we need some percentage of people who actually are trying to like lift up the quality of things. Otherwise it'll just be an eternal slide into a pit that we never get out of.
Recently, also, oddly enough, there's been some examples of these kind of long gestating games that I think might have also been first times. Like, I want to say both
Blueprints was like 7 years or
Blueprints and
something.
Animal Well.
It's really
I don't know if
AI
Animal
was the
Well
next
was
steps, and we have to improve or refine it. I mean, that's what it's gonna be like, dude. Like, that's what programming is gonna be like, and stuff like that, where it's like, or even project management, where you're still gonna have a human, but it's going to be like an AI say, hey, does this sound good? And most of the time, it's good enough, because that's what people don't understand is like, you're probably not coming up with the best response yourself, and most people aren't. And really, like the way in life, it's like, especially in businesses, like you just want stability. You don't need. This isn't like, you don't want it to be like drama, and it's like a movie, and it's the Avengers, and it's the end of Avengers Endgame, where it's like Thanos is snapping his fingers, and you're just hoping half, it works, and whatever. That's not what a business is supposed to be. A business is supposed to get rid of unpredictability and instability, and be able to basically like make a promise and keep the promise to the customer. That's all business is. Like, you make a promise, and whatever it is, whether it's a product, a service, somebody gives you money for a promise. The promise is then fulfilled, and then so it's like you don't really like when you're running a business, you're trying to avoid like instability, you're trying to avoid unpredictability and destruction more than amazingness. So it's like that's what AI is really, really good for that. Unless you're Dragonborn, yeah. AI is something good at log analysis and troubleshooting, but retarded while being autistically good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of like that's like, in my opinion, how it's gonna be like with AI and programming. It's gonna be like you're directing it like a project manager, and it's a good developer. It already is a good developer, but you just have to be a good project manager. It's not amazing. It's not like the best in the world, but like it's pretty workable in my experience. And I think I kind of have the evidence of that, but I kind of have the evidence that in my like stuff I've made. But I think it really is just a reflection of being a manager and being like, that's really gonna be the job. There's gonna be somebody who like did the job of actual programming and did actual things long enough, and then as a result has a good idea of software engineering in the real sense of the word, not the code monkey sense of the word, not the scripting sense of the word, but actually like systems engineering. And then from there, they're going to be able to do things. Like I've had people who are smart and they are using AI to try to do things, but they just run into problems because it's like they're not software engineers. They might understand programming, but they're not software engineers. So anything over a very specific complexity is just too much, because it's like something goes wrong and then it's like, well, how do I do it? Whereas like when I'm doing it, it's like there's an internal model I haven't looked at the code once. Like I literally haven't looked at the code once in the game the entire time I've been doing this. But because I know how programs work and I understand what it's saying in the logs and as it's going along, I have a very, very decent model. I'm sure it'd be different than when I look at it, but I can see little splices of information. It's almost like a project manager where I'm seeing like commits and I'm seeing stuff like that. Obviously way less than, I'm not looking at it in that sense. And the reason I'm doing a game too is like, I don't worry about security. I'm not worried about like, is this going to leak information, or is this going to, be insecure? It's like a video game. That's a toy. It's not. I'm not worried about building a vault to a bank. So
though. We're both very long gestating single person or close to it games.
Yeah,
And I think, like I said, I think it's gonna be this chart too, where it's like AI. It's like just like training the models. Really, is this where it's like it tails like it's like exponential. I forget what the term is, but the amount of training or the amount of compute power, the benefit, it starts really high and then it starts to tail off, where it's like you really, going from here to here gets you as bit of a change from like here to here in terms of compute on a linear scale. So it's like obviously it's like here. So I think it's like the same thing with the quality of it. Now once they start getting the once they start getting the other side where it's like not more compute, now it's like efficiency and stuff, I think they're gonna, you're gonna get to, another point where it's gonna get a lot better, maybe double like how good it is right now. But that's a ways out, I think. And it's going to push out the curve of how much you can do as one person. Like how much I've done on this game in like however many months, 2 months, 3 months, is crazy. Like it would be completely impossible to do as a normal person, using it for the amount of time I've used it. Now maybe if I was not a normal person, I could do it, but I don't know.
So if you think you can hit the target,
my coworker had a complicated Python script he had, and had Claude build it into an executable. After a few iterations of telling Claude to tweak the GUI, it made a high crash. He gave Claudia a screenshot of the crash, and Claude fixed the code. Yeah. Like that's it's stuff where it's like that. I have like tens of thousands of lines of code at this point, probably more. I don't even know how many lines of code. So like one file is gonna be like easy. And so it's like for normal people, not average, for normal people with normal restrictions, it's like good to go. But in terms of making a website, in terms of making a program that is like more complex, it's not just scripting. But then again, most people don't need actually that now because they can just use Claude for that, or use an equivalent. But if you're trying to make a commercial product or a full product, that is way more complex than people understand. Like it's not just scripting; it's actually like, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and they sold fantastic. They were very, very popular, right? So it's kind of hard to guess what's going to happen. I think it's nasty.
But even that stuff is like really, really good. But yeah, it is like it's crazy.
The thing that we don't see is how many of those did the same strategy.
Yeah, design decisions are
they just didn't have the best idea or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are important.
Any advice for people balancing CEO of game studio and someone who wants to be programmer/designer?
So the way that I do that is by not CEOing very much. Because as you know, programming takes a lot of time and game design also takes a lot of time. So one thing that I'm doing this time that helps somewhat is I did sign this game with a publisher. This is the first time that we ever did that. Part of that was to get additional funding to help finish the game, but part of it was just like they have a whole infrastructure for like doing stuff that left to my own devices I would do, but not as well. So like marketing the game, like they're running ads for the game right now. I wouldn't be running ads for the game right now. And like all these things, just like, so we're kind of delegating some of that to this other company who now also has a financial interest in the game succeeding and all that. And so I think that's good. I don't like want to run a business. That's never been my motivation, but I have to in order to be able to do what I want to do. Cause like nobody's going to pay you to do some weird thing that they don't understand. Now in the earlier days, the game business was easier. And so I could kind of be a little bit more, just lackadaisical, especially like when there was no teams. It's just me working on Braid and like with occasional contractors. It's a lot cheaper and it's like you can just make whatever decision you want and it doesn't matter that much. Now there's like a pretty serious burn rate and there's people and like, so I have to balance this. Like we have to stay in business and not be like constantly losing money year after year. But at the same time, if you turn into generic business making generic product, that's also bad because it's not what I signed up to do. And people are not motivated by that because there's just a bunch of the same slop out there, right? And so it's actually kind of hard. and the past couple of years.
That's what
you'll
it is.
survive.
That's what it is. Okay. Slop is just like Zoomer, Zillennial code for shit. Because they don't want to say something that gets them demonetized. That's 100% what it is. Slop is literally just code for like shit. That's what I was trying to make the connection. And it's basically just, it's the Zoomers and Millennials who don't want to get demonetized streaming or like whatever, being family friendly. They won't say shit. They'll say slop unconsciously. It's like unheroed or unplugged from reality, or commit whatever, self deletion instead of suicide. That's 100% what it is. It's just it's like that mental thing, even not consciously, I don't think. But that's why it's so like such a popular word now. Because what people would say for shit is a slop. It's the same exact thing. Even like slop, like what it is, slop. You know what I mean? It's actually, I think it's a better word, but it's like, that's what it is. It's like saying crap.
The massive slaughter of 2023.
That's how all swear words become swear words, because they don't want to encourage suicide. Not quite. Also, the connotation is like everywhere and mass produced. Yeah, but it's like saying something is shitty quality is like the same thing. Oh yeah, that's slop, or yeah, that's shitty quality. It's like it's more efficient to say. It sounds more fun to say, and it's not as gross to say. It's more like Pixar. It's more Pixar than shit. You know what I mean? Kind of funny came from Zogslop. Yeah, maybe it's just from Zogslop, honestly. It might just be Zogslop. I don't know. Zogslop did go viral back in 1945 or 1946.
2024.
1947. I don't know.
That afflicted a great amount of game industry.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Cool. All right. So I don't know if you've answered this one anywhere. I could not find it. You don't have to give us an answer if it's still kind of. If
This guy reminded me of Palmer Lucky so much. It's like annoying.
Why did you call it?
It's like if Palmer Lucky was mixed with Whirler Root.
Some of these things are just creative decisions that happen at a relatively deep level that I don't like to explain them.
That's fine.
Because sometimes the magic is in the non-explained things. And so I'll just say there's some kind of, the idea for the game involves like a mood and a feeling and like a texture. And that was just part of it. And that's all.
Cool. That's fine. All right, I got one that I feel like is really good for Twitter.
Okay.
If you could give...
Really? I would have never guessed from this person's look. I would have never guessed from his looks that it would be that type of question.
A 2-minute, 1-minute piece of advice to all people coming into modern web dev.
I don't know anything about modern web dev. What? Don't do it. What do you mean?
Well, because that's where a lot of people enter into, right? Like that's
sure.
That will always be the entrance, and because it's just the easiest to get something on the screen and theoretically make $1 million.
I know,
by
I've seen it
making
before.
Chat wrapper.
But it's just like,
so if you were to give somebody an advice other than don't do it, what would you say to them that could potentially put them on the right track? So in 10 years they look back and say that guy was right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And that's really cool. Anonymous Griper, though. I like that. That's very cool. That's very forward thinking. It might be too early, honestly. But if it's not, you guys are going to be set up nicely. Like, when it clicks, I think you guys will, if you're still going, that's like, you guys will just be like ahead of everybody else. If you're going full throated into it. My whole idea with this is like, it's going to get better as time goes on, and my skills are, in terms of design and architecture of like programs and stuff will be getting better too. So, and then they'll meet at a certain point, and at that certain point, then everything will open up to being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. But that's why it's like doing it every day, doing things, working on things, trying to, push the boundaries of what I can do, not do. And, it makes sense to me that you'll be able to, if you do it like that, then why not? Because you'll get, there'll be like a confluence or convergence rather, or a singularity rather of skill and capability and of the technology.
Say what I think the right answer is. And
okay.
This may not.
Don't do it.
I pointed to everything. Tech is changing. We are approaching the wall. We're getting on the boat now, or you will drown. Yeah. Yeah, and it has to do with just mindset. Like it has to do with mindset where it's like there's a lot of people who are, oh, society is like messed up and that's right, but they don't have the second part. It's like, how do I fix it? They're more, or how do I survive? It's like, well, it's bad, so either I can fix it or I die. And it's like, no, there's like a third option, which is you can't fix it and you might die, but you should try to figure out how to, and the technological changes, like people understand like the internet change community, change society, change how people interact. It changed like network graphs or graphs of friends, right? Where you have little communities, right? And they're geographically based. And then, you have in these little communities, right? It's like somebody's a local leader because they're very talkative. Same thing here, right? And then all these other people are nodes, right? They go to this person, this local leader, and that's just obviously oversimplification, but they go to this little local leader, right? And then because everything's localized, it's like there's local culture. Like the Midwest has a different culture than, the West Coast or like the Pacific Northwest, right? And people have a different, media, like media literacy things and stuff like that. And that's, it's regional. There's some overlap, but it's regional. And then like people will travel, but generally, somebody's going to have, everything's very distinct because it's like, well, what's popular? What band is popular over here? They might not be even known here. All right. Whereas now it's like a band, so like now, because everything's not geographically, thing. It's like the geographical thing. It's like, well, in reality, it's like communities kind of suck. Like people kind of suck and they don't really, they're not really super compatible. Like everyone has very distinct likes and dislikes. And it was only that the only reason you had communities because information didn't travel. And now, and so that was good though, because then people do things. There's like that hump of like the filtering where it's like any slight level of difficulty, it's going to filter out people. People didn't have the option to be filtered out. Because otherwise they would just be alone in their community. And it's, that displeasure would force them back into socializing with people around them because they didn't want to be ostracized, right? And then now, though, oh, you're this person, and guess what? You're in an environment where it's like, there's no actual geography for information. Like the topography has completely been flat. There's no, everything's equidistant, right? It's like me going on a website for gambling is the same exact distance from me going on a website to tweet, or me going on a website to read, or me going on a website to watch movies, or me going on a website, or me programming on a computer. Like everything is equidistant. And so, that just changes, there's still the physical location, but now everybody, this person's going over to here, this person's going over to here, this person is using this person for, this leader, this person's going over this way, this person is going over here, this person is going over here, right? And so like there's some overlap, but you have no idea, right? Like my YouTube channels as a kid is probably different than yours as a kid, right? My movies I watched is different than you. My podcast I like is different than you. And so there's no similarity. So then, that's actually now bad. That's like worse than the person going away, because now everyone's still trying to socialize, but everyone has different views. This person's a libtard, this person's a Trump supporter, this person's a Fuentes watcher, this person's a San watcher, this person is ContraPoints fan, super fan, this person is, whatever, funny gag, 9gag, this person's 4chan, this person's Reddit. And they're all in the physical location together, but they actually hate each other because they're, but they don't even talk to each other anymore. That's because, like, if you talk to somebody, there's no real reason to suspect that they even care about what you care about. So why would you talk to them when you can just go onto Twitter or go onto Reddit or go onto Hacker News or go onto 4chan or go onto wherever, or YouTube, and see things that you agree with? So, it's very like, that's what the internet did. The internet flattened the topography or made everything equidistant, essentially. Way more equidistant information wise, which then changes this. So that's what's going to happen with AI, where it's like, well, it's like, hey, I need to get, it's the grouping. I need to get a software engineer. I need to get a mechanical engineer. I need to get an electrical engineer. For this company, I need to get a marketer. I need to get something like this. And it's like, now right? So that makes up the company because you need to have these people because you can only be really good at one or two things. Like people aren't really good at everything generally. Now, really, you just need to get somebody good at this, right? This little box, and they know how to type into it. And so that's a company. And so then one of the, this person doesn't have a job, this person doesn't have a job, this person doesn't have a job, this person doesn't have a job. These 4 people kind of have a job because they can then do now the 4 jobs, they can all type into the computer. Right. And so it's like way better than other people. So it's a very, it's a very interesting thing. Another aspect of it too is like, there's so many suck ups in jobs now where it's like, I am a suck up and I am going to improve my code base of my company, or I'm going to improve my company without telling anyone using AI. And right now, AI, and in the future, AI is actually kind of retarded with things. So you're going to get these, I guarantee you, these news stories, you're going to get news stories of like this company, for some reason that nobody even noticed, had like some of these rogue employees being like, oh, I'm going to be like, ship a bunch of features to show how cool I am. And they're just going to destroy their company. It's going to like throw all these huge companies into chaos because just say it's only like 0.5% of people who are like this, who are employed. Just say you have 2,000 people. That means you have a few people, right? Or whatever. That means you have a few people in the company who are going to be doing this, and it's going to cause chaos inside the company. Just like, chaos inside a country, you only need a small percentage. And that's just going to destroy Burn.net. About the explosion of subcultures. Yeah, it's not even that. It's just like fragmentation of cultures. It's not even whatever. But it's there's some good things about it. But there's also a lot of bad things about it.
Say whatever you'd like. But...
Yeah, don't do it. But here's the thing. Okay, the web started. I saw the very, very beginnings of the web and chose not to participate. So just to spend like 30 seconds giving a little background. I was at UC Berkeley. I was in this place called the Experimental Computing Facility, which is just like students enthusiastic about programming. The GIMP guys were there a couple years after me. That's why the file extension for GIMP is .xcf, because they came out of like the same computing lab. A little bit of trivia for you.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I've always wondered about that.
So the X in XCF stands for experimental.
Yes. So this was like when, if you had a computer at home, it was like a Commodore 64 or like a not that good of a PC. You didn't have an equivalent of a Unix operating.
Yeah, new subculture fragmentation is basically what they say. But yeah, and the weirdest thing about it is they're not geographically based. Because they're not geographically based, it's like you can have people in a house. 10 people in a house, right? This is the normal size of a family in America. You have 10 people in a house, and they're all listening to different subcultures. That's not a house. That's like a disaster. That's like an explosion waiting to happen where somebody kills somebody else. Because now it's like everyone has a different operating system. Everyone has a different whereas in the past, it's like, yeah, there would be slight differences, different friend groups, different sort of thing, but you have a general town atmosphere or city atmosphere. And everyone's part of this town or the city. Different friend groups. There's overlap. It's a gradient. Whereas now it's like this person's watching somebody from California. This person's watching somebody who's like a insane racist, right? This person's watching an insane trans person or insane gay person. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and they're all in the same house, right? So it's like the dinner discussions are not going to be very comfy. Dinner discussions are going to be like very actually bad. And it breaks down everything, and like people learn to shut up. Hypothetically, and if they don't learn to shut up, they get torn apart. Like there's a reason it's like I'm like blocked on Twitter because I don't. It's just like negative. There's no real positive to being public. But yeah, so you got this. Let's check out the bear. Let's check out the bear while we go along here. Well, here we have what's it called? Turret spawn. I have to get the turret spawner card. I turned the turret spawner into a card, but let's go. Yeah, here's the bear. Dang, bro, knocking me into the air. I don't think that's supposed to happen. Yeah, the death is kind of cool. The horde killed you. Yeah, and this is all AI. That's the thing. Like, this is all AI. I wonder what'll happen if I come back in. It might just be there still. Yeah, we killed that bear. Yeah, like, it doesn't need to be buffed so much. Yeah, the spider. I just like program the spider, dude. I like sprites. I like stuff like that. I am kind of waiting for the 3D models, like, to do this kind of swag though. This is a 3D model that was AI generated off of a 3D image of like the character, the main character, what it's supposed to be. It's just not there yet. I'm just waiting for something to come out. Until then, I'm just going to I'm just gonna do it like the way I am, the way I have it, as far as my plan goes, and then basically, you know, if we can get to the point where AI is good enough, then I will adjust it with like the AI models. I will adjust it to being the 3D model generated, but at the point we're not there yet. Now, I'm not even opposed to paying somebody to do it, but I'd have to have the game be successful enough first to do that. Learn AI now. Yeah, I would say if you can, just purchase the Claude $20 a month thing, and then just do some coding with it. That's $20, Yeah, the puzzle boxes are cool. I changed it so the puzzle box, you don't know what type it's going to be. Starfall. Oh, +1 loot rarity, okay. But yeah, this is all AI. This is basically all one day. I died. I did all this today in one prompt. But I think it's it's just gonna be, it's like pushes the curve rightward of what you can do before you get to the curve of like the curve of like that like filters people out. Like, this is far past the point of that 90% of people being filtered out, like, or maybe not, maybe 75%. I think 90% of people. I don't think 90% of people could do this. It's not even done yet, but yeah, I think probably this has been enough time where I've done stuff and made stuff where I think it probably is like, yeah, the amount of work and like multiple stuff. Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, to have all this done in like 2 months. I saw a thing where I can take a picture and output 3D models and skins. Yeah, the problem with that is like the topology of it. So that's like the amount of faces, I think, is like the correct terminology for it. I could be wrong. I'm not a 3D artist or 3D modeler. But stuff like that is yeah, this is like this is so janky. I'll probably remove the skateboarding. The topology is pretty bad for it, so it doesn't really work. But yeah, I got quests, trader, bench, medical, intel, documents. I need to write documents. I need to write 3 documents today. Settings, skill trees, stuff like that. Telekinesis is just by default unlocked. Focus, that sort of stuff. I don't know. I think 3D models would really help with sales. Why not try your hand at 3D modeling? Because I want to make the game fun before that. I think about that, honestly. I want to make the game actually like really like to the point where it's as fun to play as if it was fully like, you know, whatever. And then I can go from that point and be like, okay. So I'm really in my whatever view of the world, in my view of things, it's like make it fun, make it cool. Oops. And then decide, you know, how to make it look. You know, there's certain things I can do, but like to go off on a wild goose chase and like try to pursue figuring out how to do 3D modeling right now, I think I would lose a lot of momentum. Whereas like right now I am adding, like I added like the turrets, I added the bear, I added the you know, jumping bean. It sounds like a crazy version. And I added the spider, the different like the mode, that sort of stuff. And like a lot of features about it, like the waves. I'm on like a kind of a roll with that stuff. So I don't really have I don't think I should really lose my momentum. I think I should probably keep my forward momentum in terms of programming and features and like the idea. I'm really starting to like flesh out like the, you know, like for this game, like for this mode, the wave survival thing, like how to make it feel right and how to make it feel good and how to make the map change between, right? Taking Sam High 10 years to make a game and Paul turns it in 3 weeks. Well, dude, he has to do podcasts, bro. He has to do podcasts on black people and Jews. Oh, I like Sam High though. He's very, very smart and he's very talented. Podcasts, not so much. Podcasts kind of suck. I can't even think of anybody's podcast. Maybe Norm Macdonald's podcasts are good, but Woodstown, of course, too. Also, Weekly Sweat when I was on. Also, Wangtown. But yeah, podcasts are not an art or Birdie and Paul podcast too. Of course.
System at home. That was not a thing. And so, if you wanted to program real programs,
you probably have how it looks in your mind. Yeah. There's like some cool ways that I want to do it. Like I think like a cool idea would be like literally like make the game, get the game published, have people buying it, and then from that money hire a 3D designer or like spend time being able to work on it without any distractions or having to stream and making enough money from it to be able to pay bills, right? And then actually just make it, you know, make it look nice.
Programs on real computers, there were these workstation class computers that were in relatively short supply. There was a whole controversy that like the XCF snagged allocations from the university. That
but it's early days yet. It's early days yet. We have 189 days to finish the game or get it published in some form. So early days, we have time.
Called the Open Computing Facility, and there was like a war between the students about this. All that happened a little bit before I showed up. Okay, so there was a guy next to me named Pei Wei who wrote one of the first web browsers before I even knew what that was. It was called the Viola browser. It doesn't exist anymore, but you could look it up. And I was at an early conference, and Mark Andreessen was there, and everybody was angry at Mark Andreessen.
Some things never change.
Yes. He was making the Mosaic browser at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and web browsers didn't have images at that time. They just couldn't display bitmaps on the screen. And there was a discussion underway that was one of these laborious committee discussions that Casey's talking about, because it was like, we're the web community. We want to.
How did you get the 3D model that's on the title screen? That's like an AI generated model from an AI generated image with AI generated background removal to it. I just described it and made it. And I got a nice model, and then I turned it into a 3D model. But yeah, like the rigging and all that stuff, I haven't done, and it's like I should just get the game good enough to where it's like actually from start to finish, excellent to play and excellent and fun to play. And then once it gets to that point, then I can figure out 3D models.
Everything, and he was like,
But thank you.
Yeah.
I really like the way it looks, but it's not workable. It's not really riggable in the right way because I don't know enough about it. How to do rigging and like different models with different guns in the hands and different that sort of thing.
oh, angle bracket, IMG, angle bracket, file name or whatever, URL, boom, it puts it on the screen. And they were all mad at him for implementing that and having images in his browser before everybody else. So that was my experience of the web. And like, I didn't really love it. I think it's because it's like a roguelike, honestly. It's like very simple, like a roguelike. Kind of just to have like what it is. Like the blocks. I don't know. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe my brain is working overhead. I think the blocks are fine for the game. Could be wrong though. From that time. But it was so even Viola, right, was very visionary in the following way. It was not just a web browser.
Yeah, making a game and then like that's like really for me that's like the key. Is like I want to make an actual fun thing, and it is fun already, but like fun in the sense where it's like you're a kid. It's like an actual game. I want to make an actual game that's like kind of like actually respectful of like like you bought a game. Here's a game. You bought a game, and here's somebody I put in a lot of time on it to make something really cool. That like if I was a kid and I played it, I'd be like, this is awesome. That's like what I want to do. Not like that one Thornity guy where it's like, yeah, just look for a game that's popular and then clone it, and then like do like fraud with the discounts on like the Steam page, so it looks like a discount in your brain, and you buy it because you're like addicted. Make it like an incremental game, like a slot machine. You know what I mean?
Browser that put the text on the screen, but it had an embedded programming language that was interpreted. It was a lot like JavaScript, but it was a different language, so it was not really semantically equivalent. And then JavaScript came again, a couple years later or whatever, 96 or whatever year it was, 95. When Brendan Eich famously did it in 10 days, right?
Yeah.
The reason it made sense to do something like this in 10 days was that like, look, it's just to change a couple state variables in the browser about whether they push the button or
not. Gonna lie, kind of disappointed.
Programs.
I get it.
So it doesn't.
It'll be nice when you can do the 3D models.
So we don't
yeah, I mean, honestly, that's
all
also why I'm like, I want to do it this way because I think like the 3D models will get there. It's not quite there yet, in my opinion, but it'll get there. And once it does, it'll have this moment. And then once it does have this moment, I have this game ready to go. Like I have the game fully working and, already. It might even happen before I release it, right? Like could happen tomorrow. It could happen in a month. It could happen 2 months from now. I'll have like a fully working game and then I'll be able to create the assets and import the assets and it'll just be there ready to drop in because that's the power of AI where it's like I don't need to learn. I don't need to figure out, okay, how do I properly implement this, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, instead it's like, oh, implement these 3D models properly and, rig it so they run and they rotate and hey, this isn't working. It's like talking to a developer, like a decent developer. And as long as you're good at communicating, it'll be good. And then that's why, so it's like having it ready to go and then make the system. And then, it could literally happen tomorrow. You know what I mean?
And we want it to be cross-platform, so it's just going to be a very lightweight language, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Fast forward, and now it's like the language that most software is written in, right?
Yes.
Nobody
what
thought
can
that
be
was
written in JavaScript will be written in JavaScript is the considered truth
yes.
of JavaScript.
And so the problem with all that is that somehow we forgot all this thing that we knew about programming. Like it doesn't matter what programming language you use because the computer knows how to run some back-end representation, which in the old days was machine language, right? So then you move to the browser, you're like, we want it to be portable, so it can't be machine language, right? But like, it wouldn't have even taken that long. If I had a time machine, it's like, do you try to find baby Hitler and re-educate him to be a kind and loving young boy? Or do you try to find Brendan Eich and say, look, spend 2 more days to make a little bytecode engine so that you're language agnostic on the front end, right?
Really big
One
decisions
of,
there at the time.
one of
machine.
software's biggest questions.
Yeah. So I don't know
That was-
I'm
that
not
was
serious.
amazing.
Obviously, the answer is Baby Hitler. I'm not. That's not really a joke. But because Baby Hitler was so much earlier in time that maybe everything would have gone better after that. And you know what? Yeah. So, but the point being, like, it used to be before the web that, like, if you wanted a language with strong type checking, you had your pick of a whole bunch, and they all worked the same, and they all targeted the same backend at the same level of quality. So it's not like you were using some janky transpiler to like build some massive 10x too large amount of bloat code that you can't debug or anything. It's just like they would target. I mean, those things did exist too, but you didn't have
Yeah,
to use them 'cause
teabag
you had
rigging,
choices, right?
maybe, dude.
And like we threw all that
Depends on
away,
how good it gets.
and we made this thing where like now there's an interpreter engine and it just runs this one thing, and then you can have wrappers around that one thing, right? Okay. So now we also ostensibly have WebAssembly, but it just because it came in later and people are not like, all these companies also benefit from the fact that they're the only few people who can make browsers, right? As well, that there's no competition there. And so like Google loves that, dude. That's why they put so many resources into the browser. And so they're disincentivized from making it easy to retarget, like to control your own computing environment, let's say, right? Because if there's a very simple substrate and you don't need Google's permission to have new features or whatever, they can't leverage that against you in the future as part of their more, like, it would enable incumbent browsers to come in and displace their market share and all that, right? Okay.
It's actually worse than that, because also you have companies like Apple who are actively invested in not having the web be very good, because if it was, then you don't have to use the App Store.
Yes. Yo, there's like every
And that's not hypothetical. They literally,
Yeah.
like, you can literally go watch them do that in the minutes of W3C meetings, which I have done, and it's frankly pretty disgusting.
Yeah. So every big company has a different angle on this, but they're all kind of in common. Every angle is about kind of capturing more market share and preventing their current market share from being eroded in the future by competition, right? So that's, this is all a long-winded way of saying, okay, there's good things about a browser. You can just open a web page and just there's a program running, and that's something that we didn't used to have. It didn't used to be that easy, but like we didn't have to throw away all the good things about system software to get that. And there's this fundamental confusion about this. Like, if you just targeted an equivalent to a machine language, but that's cross-platform, well-defined, it has some instruction set, and then the browser was interpreting that, which is again ostensibly what WebAssembly is, but it like doesn't quite get there for I don't know, various reasons, and it's certainly not the default. I never thought of myself as much of a cultural commentator, but I seem to be going back to this line of thought. Maybe it's because I'm old now. Like, we don't seem to be encouraging in our society propagation of the understanding of seriousness of this kind of art, such that
It's true.
we're just not educating younger people that this is even a thing anymore. Like the classic idea of art, we've taught people the fashion idea of art, right? And so I kind of don't even blame people if they don't, if they think The Witness isn't very, very good or whatever, because I don't know, for whatever reason they don't like it. Because we're kind of not, like, I'm doing a kind of a thing that we don't even culturally equip people to know is a thing, whether they agree with it or not, or whether they think it's good. Like, people are perfectly free to be sophisticated and still think my games are bad. I'm like not saying that at all, but I am just saying that, like, like, let's go back to movies and stuff. Like, basically all the
That's a
popular
good
movies are
virus.
these superhero movies,
I like that
right?
virus, Big Bunga. That's a good one. I'll have to keep that in mind for the game.
And like, story wise, they have a certain very simplistic form of story that is kind of mostly the same between all the movies. It's the same shape, and you change out the character names and stuff, and you maybe have some different jokes.
Yeah, this guy spits. This Jonathan Blow guy, he might blow, but he doesn't suck. I'll tell you that.
Even that is very different from the storytelling in film tradition that we used to have. And so that just affects people over a long time. Like their picture of what a story in a movie is has changed because of that, right? And I don't know, I just worry about that broadly across all of culture, not just games. I don't know, I'm pretty far off track at this point, so let's cut that response there. I feel like I had something that was important there, but I don't know.
Well, something that speaks to me is the idea that the youth, the people these days who are engaging with products, if we want to use a more global term, what they seem to be getting at or getting out of them is what they've been primed to get out of everything that came before. And I think this is like a truism in a sense, but if you're only ever served up superhero movies, if you don't possess yourself to go look up Twitter accounts that will send you stained glass images or old Renaissance paintings and examples of visual art that are very different than what you generally come into contact with these days. If you yourself are not the driving force on an individual level for changing the diet of art and of media that you consume, then you're not really going to develop a taste for anything other than what is algorithmically given to you and what the big dogs of any industry that you might be a part of as a consumer. If you're not seeking alternative things, then you're not going to find them just by accident usually. Or at least to the degree that you are, it's going to be very minimal. And I think that there is a concern there, because if you don't, if that goes on for a long enough time scale, then what we're seeing,
the generated AI image thing is that reward is not set up. I tested it out. I built a little thing where it would test. It would hit an API and then it would show it on OBS from the reward, but then it was just like, this isn't really beneficial and it really isn't interesting. It's a fun idea, but not really worth it.
Reagan Burns brought up,
so it's kind of now it's a fun thing. It doesn't do anything.
In his appearance on this channel, was that there's a very small subset of things that can constitute a movie and a very small subset of things that appear to constitute a game, where like a game's writer is a seemingly like a de facto obvious thing that you have to have on every game staff. And just the idea that a game has to have a story that you write in a narrative sense, which requires a writing team, is like a base assumption that's made by all sorts of different developers, all sorts of different publishers. And so the point he was illustrating, I think, is that actually the number of things that games can be in the eyes of most of the consumers, and we can argue as to where that comes from. Maybe it comes from the developers also thinking this, but
that's good, Big Mom. That's very
number
good.
of things is getting smaller, not larger, even though our computational power is increasing.
Yeah,
in
there are
some
some
ways.
reasons why I thought I decided to ultimately discontinue the AI program, the AI research image generation program. And there were some certain reasons I couldn't. I felt it wasn't safe to release it to the public and leave access to it for public people. I think they decided it was too might cause a problem if I let it.
You know, the population is increasing of the world, so theoretically there would be more ideas.
Yeah. There's the problem is, I'll explain to you. Like it used to be a 1-to-1, or like 1-to-2 ratio, or like one of like the effort it took to make something. The effort it took to make something, the effort it took to consume it, right? So it's like writing content versus reading it. It's not the exact same, but it is generally, the balance is pretty similar, where it's like 6-to-7 ratio, right? because it's so you know, you could have people who are spamming, you could have trolls, you could have stuff like that, but they're very limited. The throughput was very limited for production of stuff. Now, or like spammers trying to get you money, right? But now it's like it's like this little effort, or like this much effort to consume it, and then down to like almost zero. This level to create slop. It's this level to create high, like okay quality content that used to be the only way to create content, and it's at this level down here to create absolutely just like it could look better on the surface than this content, even though it has no value. And so it's just a matter of equilibrium. It's a matter of math. It's a matter of mechanics, that it doesn't matter that this is quote unquote less quality. This is so much cheaper. So why wouldn't, if you're a spam, or why wouldn't you if you're a troll, just use this and forget about this? Because who cares? It's about, you know, you can create 10,000 times the amount in the same amount of time as you can do like this. So like, yeah, I'm going to be using this, you know, and so that's just it's just going to destroy all public spaces. Right now it's with literature, it's for text, and that's why Twitter is just fucked and just done. Same thing with Reddit, same thing with 4chan. And eventually it'll be YouTube videos. It'll be streams, it'll be YouTube videos. But streams are kind of the last, in my estimation, the last like hurrah, because it's like, yeah, it's like you could do live reaction, but if you're gonna, why are you gonna put the effort in to try to build up like a fake stream rather than just spamming the entire internet every single social media with text, you know, for free? So it's like, you know, I think streaming is like the last human content. Real-time streaming is like the last of the human content, and yeah. No, I mean, AI is vampiric on human input. No, I'm agreeing. That's what I'm saying, is like that happens, and then what happens is like a kid reads the internet, tries to find information. You're gonna get AI information. It's gonna be it'll. I agree. It'll like basically like the input into the humans will be mostly AI slop, and because mostly AI slop, people's brains will like naturally kind of. Most brains will basically adjust to that, and then the people whose brains don't adjust to that have to adjust to the people who've adjusted those brains. It's like now, it's like even if you're not like controlled by the woke mind virus or the right-wing mind virus of being like a racist Nazi, Hitler-loving racist, or a libtard soy boy or whatever, everyone around you is like, you know, either super low information or they're like retarded because they're not low information. So they're either retarded or retarded. And so you have to live in a retarded world full of retarded people who either are like so retarded they don't know about politics, or they're not retarded, and because of that, they've made themselves retarded, thinking like Hitler is coming back, or like the communists are taking over. And so you have to live in the psych ward, because everyone in the psych ward is the Earth. And then, you know, the only people who are not in the psych ward are like retarded people, so they're retarded, and who wants to be around them? You know what I mean? Yeah. So like the AI will do the same thing, where it's like you can, you know, escape it, but you'll be surrounded by people who didn't. You can read like classical literature and think about things in a deep way. It's not hard to do. But it's that 90% of people get filtered out by like a little bit of effort. This is like way down the curve of a little bit of effort to actually read like Plato and like Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and like Bataille and Lull and what's it called? Le Bon, and then you know, all the, you know, Epictetus, Epicurus, all the people in the world, right? And so like that's not going to happen. It's like, yeah, you can do it, but you're going to be surrounded by people who don't. Right. So,
but it seems like we're getting the opposite, and this is reflected in news and reflected in
Dostoevsky. Yeah, the Church Fathers, like the Bible. Yeah, the Bible's good. I'm not a Catholic. I'm like a Thomas Ligotti type of person. I'm more like a Bataillean than a Ligottian than a Catholic. But I'm glad it brings a lot of people peace.
World events, and like there's one opinion you could have, and there's one.
I'm not irreligious. I'm very religious.
take you can give out, and like so the array of things that you can actually engage with, the array of things you can say or watch without having to put in the effort, which might be uncomfortable or even disastrous in some situations, depending on how charged the subject is, that's getting smaller. Like the amount of things is getting smaller. And you know, to whatever degree your motivations are known to you, reverse engineering them from playing your games and listening to a lot of your appearances on other shows and your speeches, it seems to be that you're trying to push for something not just different for the sake of being different, but at least if it is different and different in a meaningful way, then it's going to challenge people to think more broadly and basically force them to exist in a space where the array of things is made wider. Even on your Twitter page, your description, I believe, still says working on good new things. And when I first saw that, I even thought, wow, that's kind of funny, because nobody thinks of like new things as necessarily always being good. And I guess that's fine, but it feels like the number of things that should be good and new, like that shouldn't be such a weird thing to think about. Like, oh, this new thing is also a good thing. But where is it? You know, where are all the good new things? And do you think that this is like a big motivating factor for you? This thought of like where society, where Western culture is drifting towards, perhaps, is that like we're finding less appreciation for things that are not immediately comfortable to us?
Yeah, I think viewing it on a societal level like that has become more of a recent interest of mine. Going back further, it was always just more about what I personally am interested in, right? But at some point, you know, you get to be a certain age and you look around.
That's
and
kind of
you're
why
like,
Catholics and
am I-
Orthodox have no affinity for Israel. But that's just more like anybody who deals with them doesn't like them. It's like that's their problem. Like America was the last place that, well, Canada too, I guess. Canada isn't really, but like America was the last place of like a white country, besides Canada, that didn't have like a direct understanding of why they're annoying and like not likable and not trustworthy. And this whole like generation is like the last generation where like it's like every first world country knows they suck. There's no first world country that's European that thinks they're like cool, or like the young people like, yeah, these people are awesome. I love them. They're smart, hardworking, deep culture, really important, really like good people who are like of the book. It's like there's zero. That's like their last. That's really why Catholics and Orthodox don't like them. It's not because of anything really. It's because it's like once you deal with them, you don't like them. It doesn't. You don't need a book to not like them, or you don't need like. You just like, it's like once you are up close and personal, you like really actually dislike these people, because of the way they act, and so you don't actually. Yeah, I think it's that, and I could be wrong, but that's what I think. So I don't need a book to know what I know.
So alone in terms of what I'm interested in, right? Like where are all the people? Like when I was a kid and I was interested.
Yeah,
in
it's
this,
all
'cause I
because
got-
of
I
big.
got
It's really because of Big Bongo's rap music, dude.
in some idea of what I thought art was, or
That's what the AI
about
backlash
the
is
thing that I
for.
said about how you make things
But
well, or what.
the real red pill though is that they're not like Jewish people are not the problem. That is the red pill. It's like the ants, and once again, ants in the kitchen. Why are there ants in the kitchen? Why are there bugs in the kitchen? It's not the bugs' fault. You might not want the bugs around, but it's not the bugs' fault. Why are there bugs in the kitchen? That's the real question. You know, why are they running the government? Who was running the government before them? And why did they give the influence to them? You know, that's the real question you should ask yourself. What group of people were running the government before these people were running the government? And then you say, okay, that's the person who's at fault here, and we should never trust these people ever again.
Whatever. I mean, I had some idea of that even at a relatively young age, and you sort of always picture like, well, when you grow up and be a big successful adult, you'll be in a place where this is understood by many, whatever. And then you get there and you're like, oh, well, you know, The Eternals is opening at the box office today or whatever. Like, I kind of look around and I'm like, what happened, dude? Like, the culture that I imagined that I would be part of is not what it is. And maybe that's just how it always is. But I also feel like there is a big element of trend toward infantilization in our culture that's been going on for decades. And there's a writer called Benjamin R.
Well, you
Barber.
definitely learn from their mistakes. I don't think it's mistakes, dude. I think it's like if I team up with a criminal to scam you, and then I get cut out of the deal, and then the criminal's now in charge of you. Was it a mistake that I like tried to scam you? No, I'm just a bad person and I suck, and you should never trust people like me ever again. And you should deal with the criminal. That's what it was. It wasn't like they got tricked. They thought they were it's like screwing over us. They thought they were screwing over Americans to get more stuff. So whatever group it was that got these people in charge, those are the people who deserve the disdain. And you can figure out who it was, but it wasn't Jews and it wasn't like black people. Who ran the country before Jewish people ran the country?
Who picked this
That's
up.
who is at fault, because they 100% tried to like team up with people who are now in charge and ruining the country and mafia groups to screw you over even more, to screw over your parents, screw over your grandparents. And they 100% did that, and they 100% tried to steal more of the wealth of like your parents and your grandparents, and they just got cut out of the deal. Because guess what? That's what happens. You try to scam people, you'll be found. Bigger predators will find you. Like if you try to be a predator, bigger predators will find you. If you try to be a good person, even better people will find you. Big predators will find you too, though. Yeah, it's not the Irish. I'll give you a hint. It's not the Irish and it's not the Italians. It's definitely not two brown white people, two black groups of white people. It's definitely not the Irish, dude. One thing that Irish people have, which is nice, is they never own slaves, and they don't have any. Irish people have no delusions of like trying to take over the world and some amazing history of conquest that like makes them insane. Those are two things that Irish people don't suffer from. It was a big bongo's ass, dude.
I don't know, more than 10 years ago. And yeah, like we do seem to, maybe it's because these are somehow the things that are most commercializable, or there's
Isn't that type of lobster? Isn't it a sauce? Isn't that like what lobsters are? They put it in the sauce.
Frictions on, but like we seem to be gravitating as a mass toward things that are more baby-like and less sophisticated.
Yeah, dude. It's called. This is where it's very funny. He's very smart, but it's like we're gravitating towards Mexican teenagers. I'll sum it. We're gravitating towards Mexican teenagers because that's who's on the internet.
Sophisticated, and this has become so now. I never thought of this before, but as being so intertwined in it, but now like the way everyone talks about everything on Twitter is like extremely oversimplified and baby-like as well. But I didn't used to think of this as being a discourse thing. I used to think of it just as like an art and literature and fashion thing or whatever, right? But there's definitely, if you go back to like the 50s or 60s or something, and you think about like what was the image of an adult of those times and what did an adult do? Maybe younger people these days don't even have a very clear picture of that because it's like faded. But like, or even the 1940s, like before and during World War II, what was an adult like, and what was an adult's day like, and what did they do for entertainment, and what were they interested in? And like, I kind of feel like that has changed in a downhill way, right? And
oh, definitely, dude.
Maybe that's
Definitely.
actually an optical illusion, but I kind of feel like it's not. That said, so there's a Coen Brothers movie called Barton Fink, right? And I
Good
don't know if
movie.
you've ever seen this. It's a good movie. Good movie. But it's a fictionalized. I forget the name of the
Bro
author.
has taste.
But it's a
Borges.
fictionalized version of the life or part of the life of Clifford Odets is the author. There's a guy named Clifford Odets who was a playwright and went to Hollywood in the early 1900s, and he was like a sophisticated writer and got sucked up in this like dumbed down Hollywood writing thing. And in this movie, he's like, we want you to write a wrestling picture. And he comes back with the sophisticated film. And they're like, no, it's a wrestling picture. The guy starts out and he gets beat, and then he takes a kid or a girlfriend under his wing, and then he has a final fight where he wins. We want you to write that, right? And so, I mean, clearly that's been a thing the whole time, right? Or for this past century. So maybe it's an optical illusion, but I feel like there's less and less now as time goes on of things that are not wrestling picture, right? Like back then, if you wanted to go see the wrestling picture, that's great. And if you wanted to see other stuff, you
It's like Mexican people are late and the sun is slowly rising. It's going to be too late and it'll be daytime, dude. It's already too late. It's like internet. The internet changed everything. The internet broke everything. That was the end. When you connected brains, irrespective of geographical distance, it like broke everything. It broke all the economics of the world. Not even for white people, for everybody. Because everything now, I can buy an iPhone. It's not the exact 1-to-1 ratio, but I can buy an iPhone, smash it, record smashing it, and make more money with the video of it being smashed than I spent buying it. So the economy is like inverted. It's like the destruction of something can pay for purchasing it, because people get upset if I buy something expensive and break it on camera and I make it go viral. Right? And so like or I can, do a painting, I can do a drawing, I can do a physical painting that's beautiful, right? Maybe sell it, right? Or I can do furry porn and sell it on Patreon and make 100 times the money because I just keep selling the same picture, right? And so it's like that. I think that's like when I sell a digital thing, I'm not actually selling anything. There's nothing being taken from me. So the economy, that's completely like wrong. Like it's completely illogical where it's like I make something and then I just give it, I don't lose it, but I give you a copy of it and you give me money. And then I give the copy to somebody else and I make money. I give the copy for somebody else and I make money. So it changes the valuation of something because it's not just one thing. It's like a copy of the same thing over and over and over and over again. This distribution to everybody, the shared thing, shared ownership essentially, that gets less valuable because more people play it, so it's less distinct. And then it's just like the way information is shared is now not geographical. So now, like, why would somebody go into a city? Because the only reason people were in cities is because the smart people went there because there were business opportunities, because there were docks there, because then the smart people were there. Then you had colleges for them. Then you had like societies form around smart people because that's where the smart people are, because those are the opportunities. Now there's a bunch of like migrants there who aren't the smartest. Now it's like an inversely correlated. So now you have a bunch of these weird breeding areas of like dirty, loud, expensive places, but also there's no reason for them to be louder. So now you have all these people here. Those cities are going to fail. Where are those people going to go? Right. So it's like the divorce, picture like the information having like an umbilical cord that was tied to physical space. With the internet, it essentially was cutting the umbilical cord, and now that psychic, the realm of the psychic or the realm of the information and digital is eating the physical economy. So it's like there's two economies. There's the digital or psychic, informational economy, the mental economy, and then the physical economy. And the psychic economy was basically a baby, and it's like has an umbilical cord to the physical economy because it's smaller, because it's tied down to where you actually are. Even when you could write a book and send it around, you still had to ship the book physically. But the moment the internet happened, it was like the umbilical cord was cut, and now it's growing. It's like it's been given birth to, and now it's growing, and now it's gotten to the point where it's eating. It's like destroying. Now it's like you have people like Johnny Somali, and people like Nick Fuentes, and people like Sneaka, and people like Hassan. You have people like whatever, who are destroying or reacting to the fabric of society and accelerating the way in which it's destroyed. Because it's not to say even they're right or wrong, but to say like they're highlighting specific things. Some are correct, some are incorrect. To a degree, that's basically destroying the fabric of society. It was already being like falling apart, but now it's being ripped apart, and it's done. It's completely done.
Could find it, and now it becomes hard to find it. Like, I don't even know if I want to engage in art that's meaningful to me, if I want to expand my mind and do something that's going to open new doors for me in some way, and it's like a film or a novel, I feel like I have to go back and look at old stuff because there's not that much in the way of new stuff that's going to do that. And secondly, it feels like so much work to just try and do that because like there's all this stupid social media stuff that people read and all that, and it's like the low hanging fruit in terms of effort. And yeah, it feels like work to read books sometimes. I've retrained myself to read books, but it took a little bit. Like I had to do it. Like I reread in this year, I've read like 3,000-page books and a few, and these were like they were like science fiction books or whatever. They're not like old great literature or whatever. Old great literature tends to be shorter than 1,000-page books. So I think I've got my brain doing that again, but there were definitely a few years during which it didn't want to do that. I don't know what any of that means.
I think it means we're in a strange position as far as art and media is concerned, and what the role of it all is. And these are interesting questions to think about as a designer, I think.
Anonymous sent $15. This was my wake-up call to AI.
You can see it here. For Apple, we pretty much we more than double the market share that we have. We went from 20 to pretty much about 50%. And for the steroids and our contribution and Anaproc, we did increase our market.
I'll show it on screen.
All across the
I'll show it on screen for you.
You can see it here. For Apple, we pretty much we more than double the market share that we have. We went from 20 to pretty much about 50%. And for the steroids and our contribution and Anaproc, we did increase our market share all across the board. So we think that this recommendation is valid, and we're still going with reasons and our goals that we set in the beginning. We also run a Was it supposed to be there or not?
Classic.
Because
now as I say this stuff, I can imagine the person on the internet who's going to be like, "Oh, he's just being a snobby elitist, blah blah blah, whatever." But like,
thank you. That was good.
The trajectory of over time.
Very good.
The trajectory over time of our culture in terms of like what level of sophistication are we able to summon at all? Like that does actually matter.
That was a W.
Like if we're not able to like think relatively complex thoughts anymore, and we're not able to wrestle with nuance and things that can't be boiled down into one simple interpretation or another simple interpretation.
Yeah, this is a man grasping with grasping the reality that he's been too busy to see.
Well, first of all, I mean, that just
Or
seems
grappling,
like
rather.
a much less rich kind of a life to live. But secondly, we're in a complicated world where like we need good problem solving abilities. Like we need competent, complex people who can look at the situation and do good, effective things in response to the situation. And that's like hard. And if we're training
Yes, I agree. Harnessing AI is very important. I think it's extremely valuable. There's different forms of AI. But really any of it, it's good to think about. It's interesting. It's interesting to think about.
people to be dumb, we're not doing ourselves any favors in terms of where we're going as a world, right? So that's kind of why this bugs me. I don't know. Like the thing, I feel like I said this lately. Maybe it was on the last podcast. I don't know if every single word that I'm saying is like a repeat of last podcast, but like, so when I was a kid, I would come home from school.
Your competition is switching between Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. No, not really. Not really. What it is, it's like me versus like my competition is like the algorithm. It's like the For You page on Twitter. It's like the For You page on Instagram, or it's like the Telegram pages I subscribe to. My competition is like the things that want to take my attention from me and prevent me from being productive. It's like the fight I get into in real life, or like the movie I watch, or it's the food I eat that makes me like angry or like hyper, or the drugs I take that make my mind not work. That's the competition. The competition is the things that disturb the mind and the focus and the attention, and the lack of sleep. The body, the balance. Like everything needs to be in balance.
And I would watch a lot of like cartoons or whatever on TV, and that's fine. A lot of them were kind of stupid. I would watch lots of TV shows like in the 80s, not particularly great art, right? And spent many hours doing these things. And I can see now the opportunity cost of what if I had spent that time productively, or even just consuming better art, as opposed to like watching fucking Knight Rider and Airwolf when I came home from school all the time or whatever. If anyone these days even knows what those shows were. So that's one thing. But another thing is there was kind of this idea back then, because, I'm Gen X, and Gen X has this sort of self-deprecating, stereotypical idea about like, we're all immersed in pop culture, and pop culture is kind of trash, but that's what we're doing. It's actually kind of complicated, like what we developed there. But there was this idea when I was a kid or whatever of like, TV is going to rot your brain and whatever. And everyone was like, haha, isn't that funny? But like, nobody, like, people also, I think, knew that it was true a little bit, but they also didn't want to stop and think like, what if this is actually true a little bit or a lot, right? And now I can look back and be like, yeah, TV rotted my brain in a certain way. Like,
yo,
Jimbo's
I
just
probably would
posted
have
with
been much better
334
off.
viewers on Twitch.
yo, dude, W.
Both in terms of like life achievement, but also like socially and all these things. If I had spent that time that I was watching TV doing other stuff, not all of it, but like a lot of it, and then the time that I spent watching TV, watching higher quality programs or something, right?
What percentage of Indian men in America will ever breed with a white woman? 3%, dude. It's not even 3%. What are you talking about? Are you insane? It's probably like 0.01%. Are you like insane?
Now we're in an environment where there are more and more.
There's like 1% of people, 1% of males ever have sex. Did you know that? That's a fact. And that's like white males. 1% of all males have sex. Most people die virgins. Okay.
things that rot your brain. Like movies didn't used to always rot your brain. There used to be some good movies. And now
Did you
there's,
know?
like,
I
hardly any.
know. You should move to Europe, Jimbo, because that's closer to the Middle
Just
East.
subscribed on Kick.
Goated. W. Because you're from the Middle East. You're pretty much a Muslim.
Now there's just like all this.
Yeah, I don't know why Jimbo hates Albanians. Did you guys hear that, Jimbo? Jimbo said Albanians aren't even white. He said Nick, he hates Albanians so much that he makes Nick look like he likes Albanians. It's bizarre because, like, for me, it's like I like Albanians. I get along with Albanians. I think highly of Albanians. Some of my best friends are Albanians, you know? So it's very interesting to see that Jimbo, I just don't know what he said that made him, made the Albanians know how much he hates them.
That clickbait stuff that rots your brain, right? And games can rot your brain.
You might be able to kiss Urka. He does do that. He does kiss guys.
And like especially, so the most brain rotting games of all in the current environment right now, I think, are like these iOS time wasting games that are like, just designed to get you to sit there and like, feel like you're doing some activity and then click on the ads once in a while or whatever, right? And all these things added together, it's way more than I had to deal with when I was a kid. And so, like, I just don't know what the outcome of all this is.
Who is this, Chud? 666 Darky. This is Jonathan Blow.
It is true that my brain was kind of rotted by TV to some degree. How much worse off are people going to be today who are like 12 years old right now or whatever? I'm concerned about this. And I think we all should be concerned about it. And I don't think it's elitist to be concerned about it because it is actually the well-being of everybody depends on this.
Facts.
It's not about being highbrow or lowbrow, right? It's about everybody.
That's right. But he's right, but it's like not going to happen.
I got one that
and the
he's right, but it ain't gonna happen, dude. It ain't gonna happen. Bruce tapped in. AI is gonna gut tech companies. They're just gonna gut everything, dude. And the thing is, it's gonna gut everything before it's ready. Like before it's like set up perfectly. Eventually it will be to the point where it is as good as people think it is, but people always overestimate in the short term, underestimate in the long term. So it'll like ruin a bunch of stuff before it gets good enough to. I feel like there's probably gotta be like a stock market stuff that'll happen. I feel like everybody's like, oh, I'm using to trade the stock market. It's probably a good way to make money off of that, like counter trade that. But then again, that's like, once again, I'm going to do it because other people are doing it, so I'm going to do it the other way. That's probably how, like, the next level of thinking. Better just to avoid the gambling and trading and stuff. People are still in denial. I was. Yeah, I know. It doesn't matter. What's going to happen is going to happen. We can't really control it.